please. Uh, okay, first on the agenda we have Julia Harper, Local Foods, Local Places, Community Action Plan for Lewiston, Auburn. And I believe Sherry Blumenthal will be presenting as well. Just wait a second for him to get keyed up.
I am looking for them on the list and do not see them. I don't believe they're logged in yet, so let's see.
We'll give it a minute. If not, we'll keep them in holding pattern and move on to Eric Cousins. Okay, Eric, are you on deck, ready to proceed?
Julia Harper has just logged in, so I'm going to pull her over.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Kelsey. Julia, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hello, thank you so much. And Sherry Blumenthal is also joining to present with me this evening. I'm not sure if she's logged in yet.
She's on her way in.
Perfect. We should have set this presentation so that I was the first one to introduce myself. Okay, Sherry, we're ready to start.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Blumenthal, Community Programs Manager with the St. Mary's Nutrition Center. The Nutrition Center was the original applicant for the Local Foods, Local Places Technical Assistance Program and lead for the local steering committee.
And I'm Julia Harper. I'm the coordinator of the Good Food Council of Lewiston, Auburn. And we're both part of the coordinating team overseeing the implementation phase of the LFLP Community Action Plan. And we thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you this evening. Next slide.
We'd like to begin with providing a brief background of Local Foods, Local Places and the process that led up to today. Local Foods, Local Places, referred to moving forward as LFLP, is a national technical assistance program sponsored by the USDA and EPA, and in 2019 was supported by the Northern Voters Regional Commission. LFLP aims to support projects that create livable, walkable, economically vibrant main streets and mixed-use neighborhoods, boost economic opportunities for local farmers and Main Street businesses, and improve access to healthy local food. More than 100 communities across the country have participated in LFLP and continue to share best practices and findings to a national learning community. In the spring of 2019, the St. Mary's Nutrition Center applied and was selected to participate in LFLP. With the support from a technical assistance team made up of federal officials, the Nutrition Center formed a steering committee of community stakeholders. Together, we planned and executed a 2-day conversation and workshop, and then finalized the outcome of the workshop, a community action plan. Next slide, please.
And I just wanted to check, are you guys able to see the slides?
No. Not yet. We're working on it.
Oh, okay.
We do have copies though in our packet in front of us, or just on the screen. But please continue, and we'll get those up, and they are publicly accessible too.
Okay, great.
So we're on the one entitled LFLP Community Conversation and Workshop. So here is a closer look at the Community Conversation and Workshop, which occurred in October of 2019. The 2-day event brought together more than 80 community members across municipal, business, and agricultural sectors to envision a more robust local food system and economy for the LA region. The event kicked off with a tour of farms and food businesses across Auburn and Lewiston with the technical assistance team and steering committee. This was followed by an evening of community visioning and then a day-long planning session and workshop. The outcome of the event was a draft action plan developed by event attendees through a participatory and community-driven process. Please see Appendix C for more photos of the full LFLP event. And you can go to the next slide or turn your page in your packet. It is important to note at this moment the converging factors that led up to LFLP Lewiston Auburn. Auburn and Lewiston have a rich history of and a renewed interest in livable, walkable, vibrant downtowns. The region is a unique mix of urban and rural with small to mid-sized farms within 10 miles of the urban core. So next slide or next page. In the last 15 years, there has been a rebirth of the downtowns, with tremendous energy going towards increasing community engagement and supporting revitalization and planning efforts across neighborhoods. Examples of this include the new Auburn Village Center study, and more recently, the Auburn Pedestrian Safety Mitigation Plan. There has also been a significant amount of energy put toward understanding our local food landscape and building greater food security. Next slide. Some of this energy has been channeled into efforts such as the multi-year planning process by the City of Auburn to enhance the agricultural and natural resource zone that culminated in 2019 and led to the formation of an agricultural committee. The first in the state community food charter, pioneered by the Good Food Council in 2016 to build shared values and commitments to a thriving food system. And the first in Maine and sold out regional land access and food economy conference hosted in Auburn in March 2019, which brought together farm owners, farm seekers, agricultural service providers, and community and economic development officials to build connections and seek solutions. LFLP was an opportunity to continue this momentum built by these efforts. Next slide. The previous research and planning with concurrent development led us to better understand the region's assets along with the opportunities to grow the local food system and center it as a driving force of the local economy. In addition to long-standing family farms with both food producing and agricultural recreation traditions, we have fledgling farms forming within and along the edges of the urban core and a growing community of beginner and seasoned farmers. There are not only existing and potential reinvestment opportunities in the downtowns of both cities, but 60% of the state's populations live and work within a 20-mile radius of LA, helping to create a strong, untapped market for locally produced goods and services. These assets and opportunities were at the forefront of the LFLP planning process and workshop and helped to shape the final community action plan. Please see Appendix A, page 37 for more regional assets and opportunities as outlined during the event. Next slide.
The LFLP action plan was finalized in January of 2019. It serves as a record of a community planning process, a vision of what makes a robust regional food system, a roadmap to help our community grow and strengthen local food and farms, an opportunity to align and coordinate local initiatives, and as a powerful tool for advocacy and leveraging funding. Please note that Appendix E in the plan includes a list of fundraising resources. It captures the local food vision of those 80 plus attendees at the workshops last October, and it crystallizes it into 16 action steps that, along with numerous individual, business, organizational, and municipal commitments, aim to fulfill the following 4 goals. Next slide or next page. So goal 1 is to strengthen access to local food while expanding market opportunities and infrastructure for farm and food businesses. There are 5 actions under this goal that range from conducting a feasibility study to determine demand and need for farming and food processing infrastructure, to building awareness of existing direct-to-consumer food platforms. Next slide is goal 2. It is to integrate local food and agriculture into city planning and economic development strategies. There are 4 actions under this goal that range from passing urban agriculture ordinances in both cities to ensuring that food and farm sectors are represented as critical and integrated into Auburn's next comprehensive planning process. Next slide or next page is goal 3. build food and agriculture as a defining brand identity for Lewiston and Auburn. There are 2 actions under this goal. The leads or the champions of this goal are the LA Metro Chamber and the Good Food Council of Lewiston Auburn. These actions aim to co-create a local food and ag brand identity for Lewiston Auburn through a community-driven process and to develop and implement a marketing strategy that includes a Buy Local Foods campaign that will support local food producers, increase the availability of and access to local foods, and support the local economy as a whole. The next slide is goal 4, which is increase equitable access, ownership, and preservation of land to grow food in Lewiston Auburn. There are 4 actions under this goal that range from increasing awareness among landowners and land seekers about organizations that support land access, transfer, and preservation, to assisting potential farmland seekers to purchase and secure farmland, and to record the process of securing land so that it can be used by other land seekers. The next slide is we wanted to take a moment to focus on top actions where the City of Auburn would play a unique role in the next 1 to 3 years. We envision that the LFLP plan will have a 3 to 5 year lifespan. Each action in the plan is time-bound and has a lead or a champion tied to the action, as well as measures of success. All this was determined at the LFLP event by participants with the understanding that they would be adapted as needed. And of course, in this moment, COVID-19 presents such a reason for adaptation. This chart in your packet references the page number where each action can be found in the full plan, who the leads are, and the status of the action. So the first is that is listed is 2.3, pass urban ag ordinances in Auburn and Lewiston. The leads for this are the Good Food Council of Lewiston Auburn, Shelley Norton, land use planner for AvCog, and Jessie Tannenbaum of Eli's Homestead. Urban agriculture means the raising of crops and animals in the urban environment to increase access to healthy foods, support healthy living, to foster community connectivity, and to provide economic opportunities on vacant and underutilized land. The status of this action is in the early stages. The leads have begun preliminary background research on urban ag ordinances in other cities nationally, are exploring promising funding opportunities to further support the cities and the community partners in this work, and have connected with city staff in both cities to explore these partnerships. In Auburn, we look forward to engaging the new agriculture committee in this work. The second is 2.4, develop a regional growth strategy to support ag production, processing, and distribution to grow the ag sector and to bring new businesses and jobs, for example, new farmers. The leads for this action are Shanna Cox and Scott Benson of the LA Metro Chamber. This action is about developing a regional food and ag sector strategy that supports economic growth. The status is in the early stages. As an initial step, the Chamber has already prioritized food and ag businesses and infrastructure within existing loan pools. For next steps, the Chamber is eager to partner with both cities and is interested to convene conversations following this presentation and conversation. The third action listed is 2.2, ensure that food and farm sectors are represented as critical and integrated to Auburn's 2020-2030 comp plan. This includes crafting a robust and inclusive community engagement process to identify priorities. The leads for this action are the Good Food Council and consultants hired by the city to guide the comp plan process. So the status of this action is not yet started. After speaking with City Manager Peter Crichton, we understand that the city's current plans are to update a few areas of the comp plan instead of doing a full update. And also that food security, food systems, and food in general may likely be among the topics selected for the update. And this makes sense given Auburn's many recent investments in food security and agriculture. And the Good Food Council looks forward to supporting this work when the time comes. So next slide. We wanted to acknowledge the recent efforts that the city has taken, which are in alignment with the LFLP goals, which include lowering the ag building permit fee, the commitment of CDBG funding to support new farms and farm expansion, ongoing support of the Auburn Farmers Market, supporting Auburn Community Gardens with CDBG funding. Next slide, please, is requested actions. So we request that the council adopts the Local Foods, Local Places Action Plan, which was created by a community-driven process, and recognizing that the plan is a snapshot of a moment in time and that the 16 actions of the plan will continue to be adapted based on community need and circumstance. In the resolution, we request the council acknowledges that the plan is in alignment with the Lewiston Auburn Community Food Charter, which was adopted by resolution by this City Council in 2016, and that investment into local food will result in increased food security and expansion of our local economy. We also request the city advocates for the plan. One way to do this would be to encourage city residents, officials, and locally based businesses and organizations to engage and help further the LFLP action plan's goals. So we thank you so much for your time and consideration, and we look forward to answering any questions.
Julia and Sherry, thank you very much for your time. I mean, it's a very timely topic, and I'm glad you're presenting today. Obviously, it's been on the forefront of a lot of our minds over the last 90 days. Council, any questions? Councilor Zanya?
A couple comments. One, I want to say that this kind of work is the gold standard in terms of community-engaged research. And I am just really so impressed with what you all have come up with in the process. I hope that we can make sure that food systems is in the comp plan. I know that moving forward, we don't have people in place yet, but I think it'll be really important to have that integrated into the plan. Thank you. The last one was that I'm very glad that the Auburn Ag Committee is being considered or will be integrated into some of the leads on this. I think this plan can actually give them a blueprint for moving forward in some really important ways. Thanks so much for your work.
Any other questions or comments? No?
Just a quick
Councilor
comment.
Boss?
Just a quick comment to say thank you so much for your presentation. I had the honor of participating in the two-day presentation with the EPA team when they were in town. It was the culmination of a lot of great work, and there's a lot of great work to follow. And I just want to say that I do support the LFLP action plan, and that I will be writing a resolution to support it, then present it to the next meeting on July 1st.
Very good. I will say that later on, our Ag Commission will be created. We'll be giving direction to the Ag Commission on a priority list of topics to be working on. You will be engaged in that, of course. And I think that based upon the immediate needs of the city with regards to food security, in a timely fashion, as you can well respect on a planning season, and how can we be prepared for the next season, if you would, if it's not too late for this current season. So that's going to be a lot of conversations over the next few months on that. And I want to make sure that, in reference to introducing a resolution, that it's first vetted through the Agricultural Commission, which is under their chartered purview to look at first, and make sure it aligns with some of our strategic goals for the betterment of the health and safety of the population. So we can talk about that later, of course, but we have to make sure that if we form the commission that we listen to them. So we want to give them a chance to review this as well. Is there any more comments? None being? Okay, thank you very much, folks, for your time. We really appreciate it. And it was great reading, too, and I think we're going to reference this for quite a long time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on the agenda, we have Mr. Eric Cousins and Mac Richardson. I'm not sure if Mac's on, Kelsey. They're going to be discussing.
I am here.
Oh, hey, Mac. We're going to be discussing an agreement with the Lewiston Auburn Water Pollution Control Authority. So I will hand the mic over to you two gentlemen.
There we go. So now you can see that I actually exist.
Mac, you may want to have Eric lead off.
Pretty good.
Eric?
Mayor and Council, we have been working closely with Mac and Travis Peasley at the Lopka Compost Facility on Penley Corner Road. And over the years, it's been necessary to make amendments to the planning board approvals. Although we've had, I believe we've had the same agreement with the City Council since 1993 when the facility opened. We've made changes to our ordinances during that time, now even allowing private compost facilities in the ag zone. And LOPCA has made substantial changes to how they manage sewage waste within the cities of Lewiston and Auburn. One of the big ones, I think, was adding the anaerobic digester that substantially reduced the amount of waste that they had for composting, but it also made it a waste that is much less prone to creating odor issues than they had before they had the digestion process before delivering compost to the facility. They had made some changes to, because of the substantial reduction in waste, to keep the facility efficient and the sewerage prices competitive in Lewiston, Auburn. They had accepted waste from other southern Maine, I think mostly, sewage treatment facilities and kept the volumes up so the facility remained efficient. Over the last few years, they've been experimenting with ways to run the compost facility without the odor mitigation system that was originally done in 1993. Technology has changed, and Matt can explain a little bit more about that, but the technology in 1993 didn't anticipate some of the challenges that the odor mitigation system could create with localized groundwater right around the facility. And working with DEP, they've been asked to discontinue using that, and they've come up with a plan to operate the compost facility to meet the minimum needs of the community without creating odors and without using the underground odor control system. They've been experimenting with mixtures since September of last year, I think it is. It's kind of a pilot program for how to do composting that's still effective. And they'll be wrapping that up this summer with DEP and have all the data that they need to demonstrate that they can do it and not have an impact on the community or the environment. And we're looking to just check in with the city council at this point. They have two really main approval documents with the city right now. One of them is a contract with the city council. Many of the items that were required in 1993 have already been satisfied or are no longer relevant. Reconstruction of Penley Corner Road was one of those. That's been done, completed as required. And they also have an approval from the Auburn Planning Board that the ordinance requires. And we're looking to make sure that those two documents either align so they're easy to understand and follow, or possibly if the city council is comfortable after Mac can kind of explain some of the nuances of those documents, perhaps we could just do a planning board approval that covers all the items and not to have two separate agreements. So we're looking for feedback from the council on that specifically. So thank you.
Should I offer a few thoughts at this point?
Please do, Mac.
Okay, first of all, Travis Peasley is stepping up to be the superintendent of the Water Pollution Control Authority, and I'm stepping back, although I will be helping as needed going forward. But the main thing that I guess I want to say is that what the Lewiston Auburn Water Pollution Control Authority, LOPCA, is interested in doing is serving the two cities in the most environmentally and cost-effective way possible. And at this time, we think that is composting the biosolids, the wastewater treatment plant solids after anaerobic digestion at the compost facility. We've had some challenges with our Class B land application program, which has been a wonderfully successful program for over 35 years. Our compost facility has been very successful. But we do feel that it makes the most sense to step forward with the city and really ask the city what the city wants in terms of an agreement. And the authority will have no problem in meeting whatever requirements the city has. It just seems to make sense to us at this time that it be one document, not two, if that's possible. And I will just mention that it is important to remember that the Auburn City Council agreement was made nearly a year before the compost facility started operation. So it was really a very forward-looking document, had a lot to do with site improvements, site distance on River Road, for example, some of those kinds of things. The planning board document, on the other hand, is much more of a, what are you going to do when you operate document? And so it seems like that is the one that is the more useful going forward. But again, it's really at the pleasure of the city council, and of course, the city planning board. So hopefully that's a good introduction to where we are.
Well, thank you. No, thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Steve Milks. Councilor Milks, you sit on the board. Any thoughts before I open up to the rest of the council?
On LAPCA?
Yes.
I know that there's the,
Mayor, I serve on the board.
Oh, ASD. Sorry, got my acronyms confused. Peter, thank you. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. I think that Eric and Mac have summarized it pretty well. The question really is, how comfortable is the council in having one agreement that would be between LAPCA and the planning board versus what we're doing today? We have two separate agreements. And I think that, the agreement with the planning board is something that obviously we still need to work some of those details, but as a member of the board of LAPCA representing the City of Auburn, I've been very impressed with the board itself and how they've dealt with issues and the management team and the team that they have at LAPCA and trying to work with the Department of Environmental Protection to work through these various issues. So I think the question is, how comfortable is the council in having one agreement with the planning board versus two agreements with the planning board and
Council, thoughts? Councilor?
I really trust the work that LAPCA has been doing up to this point, and they've been very thoughtful about it, and as you mentioned, really had a lot of foresight. So to me, having one agreement that goes to the planning board seems the most appropriate way to address this at this point.
One agreement for both planning board and council.
Right.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Efficiency is good. No other thoughts on this?
I'd just like to
Walker?
make the comment that as long as everything comes back to the council so that we say that we agree with our planning board and they don't make the final decisions, council should be the decision makers.
Very good. Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I share the same concerns as Councilor Walker. I'm not sure if I really want to give away my authority to just let the planning board manage the document. I'd like to be able to see it so we know what I'm agreeing to.
So I think, any other comments on this?
Yeah, I would agree with that, to have one document but have it be reviewed by city council. I think it's redundant to have two, but I think it's appropriate for us to have review of it.
If I can just jump in and say, from LAPCA's point of view, that would be terrific. I think that would only be to the good to have both the planning board and the city council have input, review, be comfortable with the document. But in the end, having one would really be helpful to make sure that it's easy to, that LAPCA complies with every thing that the city wants.
Very good. I think, so to summarize what the council is stating, and I give a little point of clarification maybe to be helpful. One document, one governing document that has city council final approval, we might want to explore if there's certain areas or purviews that the planning board can ratify with regards to their scope of work, i.e. land usage and application. That's only a suggestion. Instead of having it always go through both planning board and city council, there might be scenarios in which just the planning board alone should approve certain things, and that's just hypothetical, but I think it's worth exploring a little bit more in detail, just for the sake of efficiency, again, without giving up city council purview over the entire document. Fair enough, council? Okay, I'm getting nods. Mac, Eric, good? Yes, okay.
Sounds I'm very happy. Thank you very much for your consideration. And just one other quick thought, and that is that, of course, the meetings of the LOPCA board are public meetings if the council at any time wants even more direct access to the LOPCA process.
No, thank you. And Mac, thank you very much for all your service over the years, too. You've really been, I think it's a testament that very few people go to your meetings simply because it's run so well. So usually when councilors show up, there might be a problem. I'm not saying that's always the case. Councilor Gary had a parting comment.
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of my concerns is, like, when accidents happen and we find out after it's happened that you're not in compliance, I want to make sure that we know what's happening when it happens and not know months afterwards. And I'm afraid if something happens with the agreement, the planning board may know of some things that we should know, and it might be a jet lag time difference between we hear about it.
Very good. No, that's a notification clause within the contract should absolutely be there. But just on a protocol standpoint, Peter, once a final, or a draft, I should say, not final, but a draft contract is presented, we can bring this back to workshop, look at it, and make sure all the individual councils and the planning board in a separate meeting, their points are addressed to this contract?
Yes, and in regard to what Councilor Gary said, when I step down the end of June and Phil becomes the next city manager, either Phil or the assistant city manager would represent the city on the LOPCA board, and that's your communication avenue between the LOPCA board and the city council. And I will say, while I have this opportunity, Mac, you've been at LOPCA for, I think it's 32 years.
Yes, sir.
And you've been the superintendent for how many years?
30 of that.
So you have made a significant contribution, sir, and the city appreciates the work that you've done, the contribution you've made, and we know that Travis Peasley will follow in your footsteps and do, I'm sure, a great job. But thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. I can't echo your sentiment about Travis being top shelf and totally ready to step up. Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, and we'll look forward to seeing the draft contract in a workshop shortly. Appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you all.
We're all set there. Moving along. Next, we have a draft of the 2020-2024 CDBG Home Consolidated Plan and PY, 2020 Annual Action Plan. Mr. Lenhart, Zachary, you're up.
Yeah, am I on the screen? You guys can hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. So I would thank you for hosting me, and I'd like to get in. So we've been working on the consolidated plan, 2020 to 2024. Consolidated plan is up for renewal. We need to submit that 5-year plan along with the annual action plan for program year 2020. We go down the next page there, the consolidated plan overview. We start in the beginning of March, kind of before this pandemic response started. It seems like forever ago. The council we brought the 5 goals of the program for the consolidated program and got your comments. So those are incorporated in here, and those tie back to the strategic plan that was passed at the end of last year, Auburn strategic plan. The 5 goals being provide safe and affordable housing, and then the letters you can see in this coincide with the strategic plan, the growth and quality of life and investment sections of the strategic plan. So again, first goal, provide safe and affordable housing. Second goal, promote economic opportunities. That allows us to do economic development projects with CDBG funds and home funds. Improve public infrastructure and facilities and eliminate blight. Again, you can see how it links back to our strategic plan with the letters there. Again, that allows us to do projects similar to like the senior center that was done, and walkability projects like sidewalks and road infrastructure, things like that. And then the fourth goal is provide essential services. That allows us to do funding of like the senior center, the recreation department summer camp scholarships. We also fund the, in the past, the community gardens, the Head Start program, and literacy volunteers. Many of those are that goes under that goal to provide essential services. For citizen participation, the plan goes into a few things. This kind of just outlines the meetings that we've had as the Citizens Advisory Committee. Again, this is just a summary of our meetings, and that we came to the council in March with these goals. And we did a survey to reach out to local businesses and area nonprofits. I think some of the councilors last year received that survey as well and got back. The geographic priorities of the consolidated plan. This is a little bit changed from the last consolidated plan. This year we are using the census tracts that were provided by HUD. These census tracts are census tracts where more than 50% of the residential population living there are below the low mod, or would qualify for the low to moderate income groups. So this allows us to do public infrastructure projects in those areas, and that benefits a low moderate area. These areas are a little bit larger than the current target area, and we didn't have to do a consultation study in our own thing. This is provided by HUD, so administratively it was a lot simpler. The priority needs on the next page, that goes along with the goals. It's kind of just more the format that HUD wants it in, and you can see that. Our anticipated resources, section 5 there, you can see for the 5 years. I'll get to that next page there. Here's our anticipated resources. So if you're going across that first CDBG box, you can see this year our annual allocation is $569,447. We're projecting approximately $200,000 in program income, meaning like the loan repayments that we've given out for residential rehab, and about $140,000 of funds that are left over from the previous budget will be rolling over. So that this year would give us $909,000, approximately $447. And then the expected amount for the remainder of the consolidated plan, that's assuming the annual allocation was about the same for the next 4 years. And then the box below, you can see the home funds, kind of similar survey there. This year's allocation is $491,476. What's important to note about that figure is we split that amount with Lewiston. So we're the lead administrator of those funds, so we get a little bit more in administration funds than Lewiston, but essentially we split that $491,000 50-50 with Lewiston. The next in the consolidated plan, this is for HUD, just who's carrying out this plan, and this is, City of Auburn, and then again, because we're in a consortium with Lewiston, City of Lewiston is on there as well, and then Auburn Housing Authority, because they do a lot of administration of our rental, the security deposit loans, so they do have some administrative duties with our plan. The next thing is the homeless, services to the homeless and HID, basically what's available in Lewiston, Auburn, quick checklist. And then below are the, again, a quick summary of the homeless organizations that we work with in Lewiston, Auburn. Mainly we work with the Lewiston Auburn Alliance for Services to the Homeless, which is a group of local homeless advocates, advocacy agencies that meet once a month and discuss kind of the needs of the homeless in the area. This is the goals in a summary for what HUD would be looking for, and the goal of outcome for each of those goals on the on the right. So you can see for the goal, providing safe and affordable housing, we're looking to, our goal will be rehabilitating 100 rental units, 50 homeowner housing units, and provide tenant-based rental assistance to 125 households. Same thing, the improved public infrastructure, the 4,000 persons assisted, that's based mainly on an area benefit of that geographic area that I showed earlier that we are doing. And promote economic opportunities, again, with, we're looking to create and retain 10 jobs and assist 10 businesses through small business loans and micro enterprise loans. Also provide, the last goal, provide essential services. We're looking to fund public service activities, and the goal is to benefit 1,200 persons / households. Again, this is our goals. Again, I did an overview of those at the beginning. HUD asks for what we do for our lead-based paint hazards. A quick synopsis: all our projects get tested for lead-based paint. All our work is done by certified contractors. We're working with City of Lewiston under their lead paint grant. We are not included in Lewiston's next lead grant, but we are still working with the Maine State Housing, and we were going to meet with Healthy Androscoggin about applying for our own grant, but again, that was a meeting that got canceled because of this pandemic. But I imagine that we'll be meeting with them again soon once we can schedule something to potentially apply for our own lead grant as well. Anti-poverty poverty strategy, quickly, and then monitoring. We have to all our funds, basically just how we administrate our funds. When we give out sub-grants to people, we're asking to see their files and things like that. And then I'd get into the federal fiscal year 2020, but it'll be the first year action plan. This is the budget for the first year. This has, again, the top gives us the goals of the 5-year consolidated plan there, and then the 2020 funding breakdown. We kind of went over this in that consolidated plan thing. But again, $569,000, 44 and $447 of CDBG funds with our program income and carryover funds. Our portion of the home grant will be $367. $90,000 in anticipated program income and a little bit more carryover funds in that program. Each of these are a breakdown of those strategies. So fair housing, we are hoping to do a fair housing, or we will be doing a fair housing talk with local landlords and tenants. The rehab loan program, the proposed budget for that is $400,000. That's the program for CDBG funds that we rehab rental properties. There's money in there for lead testing and clearance. Excuse me. The Safe Voices, their grant is a public service grant, but that would get filed under the provide safe and affordable housing as opposed to provide essential services. It's considered a housing service, so it would meet that goal. Again, with Tedford Housing as well. That's public service that meets the housing goal. The next goal strategy, promote economic opportunities. The economic development program, we're re-looking at guidelines, but again, we're looking to be giving loans out to small businesses that create jobs and assist micro enterprises that are owned by low to moderate income households. There's $100,000 for that in the first budget. Under improve public infrastructure facilities and eliminate blight, the Boys and Girls Club, as I understand, the city owns that building and leases it to the Boys and Girls Club. The city is responsible for large building systems and keeping those up to date. The roof of that building needs to be replaced, so that's something that the city will be required to fund, and it will be eligible for CDBG because of the population they serve. So that was, I think, a good public infrastructure project. Also the New Auburn raised crosswalk, that's been raised multiple times or brought up multiple times as a problem area. Again, it would qualify for CDBG funds, so it makes sense to fund it through that. Also, the Neighborhood Challenge Grant is popular. It allows neighbors to get together and in the low to moderate income areas and do kind of beautification projects that eliminate blight. And that's an open application process. And we've had a few kind of successful projects, the benches in New Auburn, and then the neighborhood signs for New Auburn also were done through that Neighborhood Challenge Grant. The provide essential services, this is the most of the essential, our public services grant. We are capped at 15% of our budget for that. So we set a budget of about $110,000 this year. Again, I mentioned Safe Voices earlier and Tedford Housing. They fall under that public service cap. And then the other ones under this essential services also fall under that cap. The Head Start program, proposing $8,000 grant to them. Literacy volunteers, $8,000. The Work With Me Police Department, we've given them about $45,000 every year again, so we continue that. The Rec Department Scholarship, last year they got $18,000. This year we didn't have as large amount of carryover, so our cap went down So it is a little bit less this year. Everyone, what they got kind of went down. And then St. Mary's Nutrition Center, the community garden coordinator, 10,000 there. They will have 3 gardens that they will be managing this year, so it should be a little bit more. And then Community Youth Services applied for a grant so they could lease out space at the YMCA. They do a lot of good programming with high school and youth around here, including the alternate for suspension, so kind of an in-school suspension program, and they need some space for that. So that's what that budget was for. At the bottom, CDBG administration, that's 122,000. That's used for the salaries and benefits of staff. Also, we have software subscriptions, cell phone services, all those goods and services get funded by that part of it. That's the CDBG budget we just went over. Again, the next one is the home budget. 100% of the home funds must be spent on housing activities. So the first one is $30,000 for home buyer assistance. This program, sometimes we struggle a little bit with this program because the house that a first-time home buyer would buy needs to meet housing standards. So with our housing stock, that's often difficult, but it's good to have the program because we do have some people that are able to find it, but it often leads to a person, they buy the house on their own, but then they come back through our program for homeowner rehabilitation, which is the next program there. Though the homeowner rehab program, that's for homeowners and single-family homeowner units. This one, we put a little more money in it because when we're done an activity, the whole house needs to meet housing standards. So often those projects can be fairly expensive. Tenant-based rental assistance. Currently, we do that with Auburn Housing Authority. So if they have a Auburn housing voucher, they can get a security deposit loan program. We've also proposed doing in the past, we had through the Gorman Fund, we had a security deposit program for people that didn't have a housing voucher, and we're proposing on setting one up through GA so we can assist more people besides just the Auburn housing voucher residents. And then the stay-at-home rental assistance program, that's for families that are in danger of becoming homeless, that have children in the school department. It helps keep these kids in their classrooms, so they're not being, shuffled to different schools, and it helps stabilize their family. And it's been a very successful program, actually. We get a lot of good, positive feedback from that program. And then again, the administration at the bottom, same thing as the CDBG administration. So those are the two budgets and the goals of consolidated plan. There's a lot to the consolidated plan. That was really a summary, but I can take any questions or concerns that anybody has right now.
If I could just open up, and if I could summarize this. This is one of the last key components in executing the strategic plan from a financial standpoint, as well as the council's prerogative of a commercially viable downtown. Doing rough math, looking at everything that Zach just outlined for us to the CAC, just annually, we have with acquisition and Devo, the the Downtown Development Fund, which we're talking about in our CIP, the home funds, the CDBG, plus the initial tranche of CDBG money from the CARES Act, total is right around $3.5 million. that can be used for a variety of things and can be leveraged within each other in combination. So it's a fairly healthy amount of money. So I just want to kind of put that out there in perspective for everybody to look at. Open this up to any questions. Councilor McLeod?
Thank you. Zach, thank you for all you do. It's a lot of programs that you help out with within our city. I have maybe an overarching question. Within those census tracts that you've identified, if we were to utilize all of this money over the next 5 or 10 years and bring that entire area up and have a revitalized downtown, what happens to the CDBG program at that point? If those census tracts kind of go away, is there like a secondary area that we would be able to focus on?
Well, how CDBG typically administers that, or it's actually HUD would do it. They do have some entitlement communities where that have experienced quite a bit of gentrification, and and then the income levels have risen above the moderate level. What HUD does in that case is the community is still eligible as an entitlement community, but usually HUD takes like the lowest 20% area of income and calls that your low income area. So depending on how the census tracts went, if those became a high income census tract, potentially a different census tract would be in our a lowest fit.
And if I could follow up, that's a great question, actually. And it should be a goal. It should be the overarching goal for everything we're doing. Most of this allocation and how they're choosing it is based upon, definition, correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, low income, moderate income, based upon the average household income within the city itself. So as our city average goes up, so don't the thresholds for low to moderate, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I think HUD bases it on at the county level, but yeah, so we do get grouped in with Lewiston, but you're correct. As incomes rise, so doesn't the low mod level of eligibility. For example, in California, the income eligibility levels are a lot higher than they are in Maine because of cost of living and such.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions, please? Councilor Ozania?
Yeah, I have a few. Thank you very much, Zach. I appreciate it. One, when you mentioned citizen participation, the things that you looked at were the CDBG committee and then the strategic plan. You also mentioned that you talked to economic development. Were there any other outreach around citizen participation?
I mentioned when we started with our public services in conjunction with Lewiston, we put out a survey to all the area businesses and nonprofits, community leaders. We did a lot of input from that. In talking with my HUD, the HUD rep, she was confident if we're basing a lot of our needs and things on the strategic plan, which experienced a lot of public meetings, that we didn't have to kind of reinvent the wheel with that those needs were expressed by the community, and we can base our needs on that plan. And I will be submitting that Auburn strategic plan to HUD as an amendment to this.
So I appreciate that. I do have to say that was pretty much a self-selected group, and we may have missed some people. One of the things in here is I see a little bit about homeless and the services that you are providing for them, but I know the mayor has had a concern about homelessness in this community, and I don't see anything concrete.
No, I haven't.
About the veterans? Homeless veterans is something you
That
spoke
concern,
about.
we've solved it.
So I'm curious that there wasn't a little more focus on actually maybe a homeless shelter or facility in the community. And you don't have to answer, I just want to make sure that it stays in our consideration as we move forward with work in this community around housing. The other thing, in talking about fair housing, I wonder if anybody's taken a look at banks and their mortgage histories in terms of people who are able to access mortgages and those who are not. And I know that you don't have that information right now, but as you move forward, it might be interesting to see, just so we can get kind of a picture of, is there a group or are there some people who are not able to access mortgages, and is there something we can do? Because obviously home ownership is the ultimate goal of housing in any healthy community. One other thing, the neighborhood challenge grants, I hope we can do good marketing, because as the mayor had mentioned, you know, wouldn't it be great to have geraniums all the way down Main Street? I think if we can encourage people, if we give them kind of a vision of what's possible with that money, because it can be used really creatively, and I've seen it used creatively, but it would be nice to maybe make some suggestions. And I agree with the mayor that having geraniums down Main Street, South Main Street, would be really great.
We did that last year. Phil, what did we use for funds on that? Do we remember?
I don't recall.
We did. There actually should be up this week, correct?
I think it was part of our 150th.
Okay, oh, very good.
Anyway, I think that that's is a really great idea. And in the anti-poverty with youth, I don't see the PAL Center sort of foregrounded in here. And I think, is it in there? I may have missed it. I just think that approaches, that serves a cohort in this community, and they do great stuff around alternative when the kids are out of school. And I just hope that that becomes an important part of what it is that we're supporting through this.
Yeah, so in a couple of responses, I know in the homelessness, in our plan, the Safe Voices shelter and the Tedford housing are two areas that they do address homelessness. And the Lash group that we participate has kind of expressed the need for a general shelter that participates in the HMIS program with the state. The difficulty in that is, you know, we would need an organization to kind of step forward with a proposal for us to fund, and we would certainly consider that. We haven't had someone with that capacity, you know, come to us yet. As far as like the anti-poverty, again, I know the PAL Center didn't apply for any of our public service grants, but a lot of the things, I think the Work With Me program and Community Youth Services do work with some of those PAL Center stuff too.
Could Lash
Well, the first CARES Act, the CDBG, from the CARES Act, the supplemental to this CDBG, that money was appropriated to the PAL Center. There was a big group of money there, so just to be clear.
I think for
food
refrigeration,
Food
right?
security and programming surrounding that from the, yes.
Oh, there is programming around that. I didn't
Around
realize
food
that.
security within the PAL, yes.
And so is Lash not capable of applying for funding, CDBG funding, to address homelessness?
Yeah, Lash is not like a 501c3. Lash is a group of, it's, you know, Catholic, representative from Catholic Charities comes, you know, there's someone from Lewiston, the veterans, homeless shelter, someone from them comes, a couple of different, someone from Safe Voices, a representative, and really it's just kind of sharing what are people experiencing for difficulties, what are this, you know, and it's more of an advocacy group. You know, they maintain a Facebook page and stuff than an actual, you know, they can't accept donations and funds or there's no admin staff to run a shelter or anything like that.
Okay, and I had one last question. In terms of the COVID funds that we gave out to small businesses, those grants, how does that align with those small businesses that are now applying for funding going forward?
So we're talking about the CARES funds that we did?
Yep.
So that's, I mean, it's very similar to what we're putting in this plan, but the funds with the CARES Act, in their application, they'll specifically have to mention how their business has been affected by the pandemic response. And then as well with those CARES Act funds, we really need to be careful of the duplicative benefits. For example, if a business has qualified for one of those payment protection loans, the PPP loans, it doesn't make them ineligible for our loans, but we need to make sure that if, like, say they did get one of our loans, they're not using it for payroll as well. They can't use funds for the same thing.
That was my question. Thank you. That's all I have.
Couple comments, Zach. Looking historically at your 5-year plans and annual results, I was wondering if you could forward this off to the council, the results, because I mean, a lot of your line items here are very similar. Rental assistance, stabilization funds. I'd like to know what the success rate or the numbers of families that were positively affected compared to goal. When I've looked at it last year and the year before, there was the majority of our areas we were not hitting goal, and I'd like to analyze why that wasn't. Is it a lack of population to serve? Is it a lack of communication? Or is it our own internal mechanisms are too stringent or not easily accessible? And if that's historically the case, then we might want to rethink our goal and rethink the allocation, at least in the future.
I know. Oh, sorry to cut you off. I know please. A big one of those, a goal that we are missing under the units of rental units rehabbed. One of those things I think that we're experiencing that is a lot of these like lead paint regulations and things like that are causing these projects to be a lot larger than and more expensive than anticipated. So we're not getting as many done.
Is there a workaround to this, or is there adjustments that need to be made, either in your goal setting or sources of funds?
I reduced the goal of rental property, like rehabbed in a couple of those, basically figuring that each project is going to cost more than it has in the past. We experienced some staffing issues with our rehab coordinator too for 2 of those 5, 2 out of the 5 years. Some significant time was missed by that rehab coordinator that caused some goals to be missed as well.
So if you could forward out some of the historical results, I think that'd be great. It would help inform future decision-making process.
Certainly. I have the CAPER, which is the end-of-year report from program year 2018 that I can forward out.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions,
I do have a
Councilor
quick
Boss?
question. Following up on that, included in that CAPER report, is it also showing the amount of, or the percentage of funding that's utilized in each category? There's outcomes, but then there's also dollars spent, and I'd love to see both. So, for example, the number of go ahead.
There is a breakdown of
Great.
that, yeah.
Thank
how
you.
much dollars are spent.
Okay. Very good. Is there anything else from the council? No? Mr. Lenhart, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. This is a lot of work, so we really appreciate it. Let's go out and do good things now. Action, 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 right? Very good, thank you.
Let's get done.
We're going to turn it over to the city manager now, Peter Creighton. And he's going to lead off our last workshop of the evening, which will be budget discussions.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I would like to be with you. Unfortunately, I can't. Tonight, I would like to review where we are at this point. And again, appreciate your engagement in this budget process. The document that you're looking at now is kind of the master list of our budget at this point. As you know, our goal is 0% increase, and that's what we're working towards at this point. We've made an adjustment on the municipal revenue sharing with a reduction of approximately 20%. We've made a reduction on the excise tax on vehicles as well. And we, as part of the solution to the reductions on revenues, we have been working on different solutions, and we have a number of vacancies in the city, and there are 6 vacancies that Phil Kroll, the Assistant City Manager, and I have been reviewing with our budget team and also with the department directors. And there are 6 that we've frozen, and I'm recommending that they not be filled and that we eliminate those positions in order to achieve the reductions that we need. 2 of those are firefighter positions. One is a vacancy currently. The other one will be a vacancy in July. And the savings on the elimination of those 2 positions would be, the net savings is roughly $43,000. The reason that it's not more is because there will be an increase in overtime costs with those 2 positions not being filled. Another position that I'm recommending not be filled and be eliminated is the police officer position with a savings of $72,318. All of these decisions have an impact and have consequences. Not having the police officer will hamper the city's traffic division unit and the goal that I know we all have of a more walkable downtown. And then with Public Works, there are 3 positions that are frozen, and I'm recommending be eliminated in order to achieve the reduction that we need on the expense side. 2 of those are equipment operator positions for savings of about $138,000, and then 1 mechanic, and those total $213,426. Obviously, the reduction there will impact the level of service that Public Works can provide, and we will have to manage as well as we possibly can. Those decisions are not easy decisions. We have to deal with the pandemic and the potential impact that we feel we're going to be seeing on our municipal revenue sharing. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but we expect that it will based on history. And in terms of excise tax on vehicles, we expect that there will be a reduction there as well. In doing the budget, we have been working very hard on the budget and have been looking at what other municipalities are doing. I've been conferring with my colleagues around the state to see how they're handling the issue. And we are all in, I think, the same boat in terms of trying to find ways to be able to reduce costs to deal with the reduction in non-tax revenues. The next meeting on June 1st, there will be the first reading of the budget. At that point, we will get into specific details and recommended motions in order to address the revenue sharing, for example, which is highlighted here. The reduction on revenues for revenue sharing, as I said, is about 20%. And that's quite different than what we were anticipating. Before the pandemic, we had actually expected that we were going to be able to increase the revenue sharing by 900,000. Now we're looking at 318. So that's quite a difference. And none of us have a crystal ball, so we don't know exactly if this is going to address the problem that we have. We do have the money that we're carrying forward with your approval on the emergency account, and we hope that that will help us in terms of what we need to do. And then we also have the fund balance, which we will be able to lean on if we do not make sufficient adjustments here with the budget. But from my perspective, and Phil Kroll, the Assistant City Manager, who can speak for himself, we've been working very closely together on this. Phil's the next city manager, so I don't want Phil to walk into a situation that he's not fully aware of. So we've been talking a great deal about this budget and what needs to be done in order to put the city in the best position possible so that when the recovery occurs, the city will be able to continue the momentum that we have going. I would like to ask Phil if there's anything that he would like to add.
Thanks, Peter. I would just say that we've also included all the department directors in these conversations, and obviously the ones that are experiencing reduction in their workforce has been part of that process and has provided us a pretty detailed report on impacts to services, what that will look like. It'll be our job now to try to determine how can we still provide a certain level of those services that will be impacted, and that might mean crossing over to other departments and trying to ensure that we're still meeting some of those needs. Some of those needs just won't be able to be met because of that loss of staffing, and that's just a reality. However, it does not mean that as we move forward, and we'll talk about this further, but with the finance director's assistance, we'll be reporting out to you each month within the finance report on just how are we hitting these certain benchmarks that we're outlining, so that we can anticipate what steps do we need to take next, whether that's further reduction or is that moving, we're on track and we can continue the way we are, or is there an opportunity to bring some services back? So all that, like Peter said, will be a case-by-case basis and moment by moment when we see exactly what the economic impact of the state will be, because that directly relates to us as a municipality.
Very good. Council?
Thank you, Phil.
Here, I'm sorry, did you have something?
No, I was just thanking Phil.
Okay.
Thank you,
Councilor
Mayor.
Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of the positions that you decided that you're going to eliminate or not fill, are there any new hires that you're going to have in this budget other than the assistant city manager, and how many?
Well, let me first say the assistant city managers is not a new hire, it's a replacement, as you know. There are no new positions that are being put into the budget at this point because of the situation that we're facing.
So in other words, Jill's not going to get a person to train to take over for her?
That's correct. We've taken that position out as part of the adjustments that we are making.
Now, is planning and permitting, they getting a new person, another person, or are they going to have to make do with what staff they have?
They are in the process of filling the urban development specialist position, which is not funded from the general fund budget, but is funded from TIF funds and CDBG in part. There's a lot going on in terms of economic development. We always talk about added value. There is a great deal happening in terms of economic development in the city, which we'll be able to talk about more in the future. Really, that position is critical to us being able to move ahead and do the things that we're hoping to do, that you as a group have talked about in terms of the downtown vision, and that we all are hoping will happen in the future.
Okay. Councilor Zani?
Thank you. I know how difficult this was and appreciate the work that you've done. The equipment operators, what do they do?
Well, they operate the snow plows, for example. That will have an impact on our snowplow operations. The work that they do during the summer is important as well, in terms of the maintenance work that we're doing and all the other activities that take place. These decisions are not easy decisions, as you know. Dan Goyette is the Public Works Director, and as Deputy Public Works Director, and the team that we have, they at Public Works will make do with the resources that they have available and do the best they can.
I forget this every year. When do we find out about rev share?
Well, the revenue sharing, that's a good question. Because of what's going on with the economy, I'm not sure when we're going to find out. Right now, we're trying to work through the Maine Municipal Association on trying to make sure that the governor's office and people at the state level understand the importance of continuing the revenue sharing at the level that it's at this point. The mayor, through the Mayor's Coalition, is also engaged in that. We'll talk about that, I think, later this evening. I don't have a good answer for you right now. We are, as Phil said earlier, monitoring the revenues very carefully. Jill will talk about it later when she gives the report on April. I don't have a good answer at this point. We're just projecting based on what we know with the economy and what's happened in the past, that the revenues are going to drop in terms of municipal revenue sharing by anywhere from 15% to maybe up to 50%. We're saying around 20% because of the numbers that we've seen.
And the last one is, when and how do we talk to the community about what this is, why it is, what the effect will be? And I'm asking probably you, just because you'll probably be the person at that point where we'll need to talk about it. You know, people complain about snow plowing all the time, even though the job is done very well, I think. But we need to be able to say, this is what the effects may be, and the reason we're doing this, and there's a 0% tax.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is part of that community conversation now. I think it'll continue as we move forward, as we continue assessing and looking at the services we're providing. I mean, with these initial cuts, that's one less plow route. That's going to be a delay in sidewalk plowing as a result of these decisions. As Peter already mentioned, that's one less traffic officer that will be deployed. So those are, it is that. I think we'll continue having those conversations. I think as the department directors can give reports and give updates, I foresee us providing those regular updates on COVID impacts are going to continue on throughout the entire year. And we need to make sure that we're updating regularly about how is that impacting services. I think like we're doing later tonight, the COVID update, we'll talk about what's currently happening with some of the other departments as we're ramping up for what does that new process look like coming into Auburn Hall. We'll continue doing that as far as these reductions, how it continues to impact departments.
And do we feel that having something in the paper at some point, I know that we can discuss it here. I just want to make sure that when people.
Councilor Lozandi, you're raising a good point, and just to add to what Phil has said, and I appreciate Phil's comments, one of the other things that we're doing, we are talking with Liz Allen about trying to frame these issues so that we can have that message sent out to the community so that the community understands what the impact will be and the consequences of these decisions. And that we're all aware of the importance of communication, so we are focused on that, trying to make sure that we do get that message out.
Well, if anybody can do a good job, she can.
Yes.
Still saying someone said about putting lipstick on a pig, still a pig. We'll see. The quick thing to do here is to keep focusing on how we can get the reimbursement money, I'll talk about that later, to come in for expenses already generated due to COVID-19 response and recovery in order to replenish some of our emergency reserves, fully reimbursable federal expenditures. So there is a lot, I think, just to cut in a little bit of the communication portion, I was going to say later, as Phil and Peter have been working on the worst case, I've been trying to secure additional funding and a release of already existing funding into the city, as well as every city in Maine, in order to help make these cuts less burdensome and the diminished services less erroneous to the residents and businesses. So it is a multi-pronged front. I do think it's a little bit early to talk about communications yet because there's such a dynamic situation when we need to see how this plays out over the next 2 to 4 weeks. Councilor Boss?
I have a quick question about overtime. So there's a pretty significant impact of the cost of overtime on the firefighter department by having the 2 unfilled vacancies. Is there a similar impact on overtime costs for the police officer position as well as public works? It's not included in the summary.
No, there's not. I mean, I'm not going to say there's not some overtime, but the way that the fire department's set up and organized in the way that the contract language reads, and the good supervision and leadership of the chief. The chief has been monitoring what the overtime costs have been over the past year with the vacancy that we've had. We've been hiring people, and then there's been someone leaving. So he's got a pretty good handle on what he thinks that cost is going to be. And I believe that figure is pretty accurate. We will try to manage that cost as best we can, obviously, and maybe we can reduce that overtime cost. But to answer your question, that's unique to the fire department at this point in time, I think I would say. And I'm going to ask Phil again if there's anything he wants to add to that.
Yeah, I think, so for the police department, you would always see if you had that extra person, if there was another vacancy that happened, that person would shift and fill that vacancy, which would reduce that overtime cost. Right now, that's not anticipated, but it could happen. So there could be an impact there. And then obviously with Public Works, one less route means those drivers will be driving additional hours, which would enhance their overtime costs as well. So the impacts are there. They're just not as pronounced as fire because of, as what Peter was saying, they're based off from each apparatus. And so as long as that apparatus is going out, you have to have that minimum staffing on each one of those apparatuses.
Thank you.
Folks, if there's anything else that's fairly quick, I'd like to take a 5-minute break before our council meeting at 7. Do we have any other questions that we need to? Councilor Walker, I'm sorry.
I'd just like to make a comment with the fire department overtime. We have tried to reduce that for years and years, and I know we're coming to a real tough time, but I think we have to look at the fire department in a whole different way. If we're going to not replace 2 people, and that's only going to save us $41,000 or whatever that number may be, and it's just, I think this is a bigger picture than what we're sitting here saying we're going to save $41,000. The overtime, that department has got so much overtime that it's just unbelievable. Police department follows that very close with overtime. And I think we need to sit here before we do any more union contracts with them and figure out how we're going to maintain, take care of our city with the fire department especially, because we just can't sustain this amount of money. We're going to get rid of 2 people, maybe on their own, they're going or whatever, but we're only going to save $41,000. It just doesn't make sense that we're going to keep doing this and we're not going to get anywhere.
Council, do you all support some direction to the city manager, assistant city manager, per Councilor Walker's comment, to come up with some alternative options with regards to fire department?
Yes.
Is that something that you would like to see?
I guess, but it seems like a lot of work has already gone into these decisions.
More work, we have time. Council, would you like to? Okay, it looks like majority are shaking their head, or nodding, I should say. If there could
Mayor,
be
can I
a
make a
secondary
comment?
proposal, of course you can.
Okay. And Councilor Walker, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what I heard you say is going forward, what needs to happen is there needs to be a review of the labor contract and how we've got the fire department structured. And I think that's true. And Phil and I have had those conversations with the fire chief, and I think the fire chief has done a good job at trying to improve the situation. I think you would all agree with that, but it's still probably not where it needs to be. So what I heard you say was going forward that we need to double down, so to speak, on what we're doing regarding the organization of the fire department, but not the budget. We've spent an awful lot of time on the budget, and we're trying to take the next step here in terms of what we need to do with the budget. We've looked at
So you don't want to. So Peter, you do not want to provide an alternative to what you proposed.
Well, I don't think that's what Councilor Walker was talking about. I think Councilor Walker was talking about the future, and maybe I'm wrong.
Would you like to clarify?
No, I think it's the future. I don't think we have enough time right now to make that happen, and we're not into negotiations for July. So, yeah, it's moving forward. The city cannot continue on the same, even if we didn't have what's happening today, we cannot continue on with the fire department in the growth that it's doing, and the raises that we put out in these union contracts are killing us. We've said this for the past 6 years, and we're still going up every year.
Council agreement that it was forward-looking and not this fiscal budget. Very good then. Phil, it's on you. So thank you very much. Okay. We're all set with this discussion and this workshop, so I'm going to call the workshop to close. Take a couple-minute break. We're going to come back and enter into our regularly scheduled city council meeting. Thank you. This meeting of May 18th, 2020. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and before we start, I'd just like to say thank you very much, everybody. We're all in council chambers today. That's great. That's definitely a positive sign of moving forward. So it's like old home week now. We're going to, first item on the agenda is consent items, which we don't have any tonight. Next, moving on is minutes. We have the minutes of the April 27th regular council meeting. Are there any corrections? Not being, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 27th, 2020 regular council meeting.
Motion to approve.
Good. A motion from Councilor Walker and a second from Councilor Carrier. All those in favor, we do not need a roll call vote now, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are accepted by a vote of 7-0. We're going to move on to communications, presentations, and recognition. Bear with me. We have quite a few proclamations to go through, and they're all very, very important. First one, I'd like to proclaim this month as Mental Health Month. Whereas mental health is part of overall health, and whereas 1 in 5 adults experiences a mental health problem in any given year, and whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has increased the number of people experiencing feelings of anxiety and depression, whereas Maine's youth have the highest rate of diagnosed anxiety in the nation, and the country's 3rd highest rate of diagnosed depression among children 3 to 17, and whereas we lose a young adult in Maine to suicide every 10 days, an adult every 36 hours, and 48 Maine veterans each year die by suicide. And whereas only early identification, treatment can make a difference in the successful navigation of mental illness and recovery. And whereas we come together with every citizen and community in our state to help end the silence and stigma that for too long has made people feel isolated, alone, and discouraged, people from getting help. And whereas through public education and working together to raise awareness, we can help improve the lives of individuals and families affected by mental illness. Now therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Jason Levesque, do hereby proclaim May as Mental Health Month in the City of Auburn to shine a light on mental illness and the need for long-term improvements in our mental health care system and increase access to care for all so no one feels alone. Signed this day, 18 day of May, 2020. I will add to this, too, that I think, especially during this time, all of us have been hit with issues. I will speak personally that, yes, it's been a challenge on certain days in my family and myself. So I think everybody at this point can have a little bit of empathy for those that are going through bigger struggles than we might right now. Next, proclamation, Maine Arbor Week. Whereas, in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of 1 million trees in Nebraska. Whereas on May 17th to May 23rd, 2020 is Maine Arbor Week, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, and provide life-giving oxygen and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore, I, Jason Levesque, Mayor of the City of Auburn, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim May 17th to May 23rd, 2020, as a celebration of Maine Arbor Week in the City of Auburn. I urge all citizens to celebrate Maine Arbor Week and support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. I will say I planted my tree this weekend. Beautiful magnolia, which I'm sure will give years of satisfaction to the future owner by the time it grows to maturity of my home or my kids. And I encourage you all to do the same thing. Usually, we plant a tree or two in conjunction with the Conservation Committee Subcommittee on Forests. This year we're not doing so, but hopefully we can make up for that in the near future. And next is a proclamation, centennial commemoration of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And I refuse to read this, and I'd like Councilor Gary to read it for me, because I think it's fitting. The 19th Amendment, the 100th anniversary, 100 years ago, Councilor Gary wouldn't be on this board. So I think it's perfectly fitting for a female member of this
Might be
body
on the
to read it.
board.
Say again?
She might be on the board.
100 years ago? Well, she wouldn't have been able to vote till now, so.
I'm over the hill.
You might have. I have no comment on that. That's all Councilor Lasagna.
Proclamation Centennial Commemoration of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Whereas the first gathering devoted to women's rights in the United States was held in Seneca Falls, New York, in 1848, citing the unfairness of depriving women of the right to vote and marking the beginning of the women suffrage movement in America, and whereas women suffragists fought to more than 70 years for a single constitutional amendment granting women the right to vote, and whereas the House of Representatives voted to pass the amendment on May 21st, 1919, followed by the Senate on June 4th, 1919. And whereas August 18th, 1920, Tennessee became the 36th state to ratify the amendment, giving it the 2/3 majority of states' ratification necessary to make it the law of the land. And whereas the official ratification took place on August 26, 1920, when the U.S. Secretary of State Bainbridge Colby certified the approval of the Tennessee State Legislature enfranchising millions of women in America, and whereas the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment is a historical milestone to be celebrated and to reflect on the decades of hard work and struggle by women's rights activists across the United States, guaranteeing American women the right to vote and to fully participate in our democracy. And
I'll take it from here. Thank you, Councilor Gary. Now, therefore, I, Jason Levesque, Mayor of the City of Auburn, by virtue of the authority vested in me, celebrate this important milestone by proclaiming the calendar year of 2020 to be the 19th Amendment Centennial Commemoration in the City of Auburn. So thank you very much for that, Councilor Gary. I appreciate that. And throughout the year, we'll be doing some activities to reflect upon this.
Thank you for the honor of reading this.
Very good, thank you. Okay, we'll be moving along now. We have an update on the Library Avenue project. Tony Bollier. Tony?
Just takes a minute.
Got it.
Good evening.
Oh, there he is.
Just making sure you guys can hear me.
Good evening, Tony. We can hear you.
Perfect. Brief update on the Library Avenue design project. This project is funded by CDBG. The scope of work is a full-depth reconstruction, which will have a similar layout to Hampshire Street. The project limits our Library Avenue from Union to Spring, Troy Street from Hampshire to Turner Street, Spring Street from Hampshire to Troy, and Pleasant Street from Hampshire to Turner Street. The city's consultant has submitted 75% plans and has been reviewed by city staff and the Complete Streets Committee. Final plans are expected in June. The project is currently not funded for construction. I would take any questions.
Tony, thank you very much for that very informative, albeit very brief. You might have the record for the shortest communications known to the Auburn City Council. Any questions? Then specifically on the Library Avenue project. None? Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to keep you on the hot seat here, but believe at this point you're going to be joined by Jennifer Williams from AvCog to discuss the Court Street study update.
Kelsey, is Jennifer coming on?
Yes, sorry, she's coming.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, Jennifer.
Bear with me for a minute. There we go.
Oh, there it
I
is.
am.
Okay.
All right. Just to kind of give you a brief update, Court Street study, as I'm sure you're all aware, we started just about a year ago. And I'm still seeing people popping up on the screen. Can you all hear me?
You're coming in perfect, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. We've had a study advisory committee that has met 5 times so far, and they'll have one more meeting coming up next week. We've had a couple public meetings. Biggest highlight, I think, of tonight's update to you all is that our 3rd and final public meeting for the study is Thursday night. Huge shout out to your city's technical staff and IT folks for working with us, because it's going to all be held remotely to go over the recommendations of the study. I'd rather not get into a whole lot of the detail of the recommendations, because that's kind of what the meat of Thursday night's meeting is, but I'm sure there's a few key questions. One of the biggest things that we looked at was the idea of the road diet, which people had, this came up a few years ago, to look at taking Court Street from the current lane configuration to a single lane in each direction with turn lanes. The consultant really worked hard on that, looking at the modeling for it, but ultimately the recommendation came back that that's not going to work. The congestion it causes, the length of the queues, traffic backing over Goff Hill and up towards CMMC was just not a recommendation that anyone could move forward with. We tried a few scenarios. One analysis that has a lot of promise is kind of a modification of it, where basically the lane configuration coming from Lewiston into Auburn and headed towards Goff Hill will stay the same. It'll be the 2 lanes, but the lanes that head eastbound to Lewiston, we're looking at basically from the Minot Union intersection to Turner Street, reducing that to a single travel lane with the left turn pockets. It does increase some congestion, and it does increase the length of the queues a little bit, but it still has a lot of merit. Looks like there's definitely potential for it. Biggest benefit of it is reducing speeds a little bit, traffic calming, plus giving areas where we can then do some sort of maybe raised median, pedestrian refuge island to help improve pedestrian accessibility, especially crossing Court Street. The other recommendations coming out of the study, a lot of it are pretty, I don't want to say generic, but kind of, yeah, I guess they are generic. It's improved signal timing, it's improving, looking at the pedestrian access, it's looking at maybe what is called leading pedestrian interval, so that at those signalized intersections, when the pedestrian pushes the button, they get a lead of maybe 3 to 7 seconds before lights turn green for the traffic, so that the pedestrian at that point is into the travel lanes and is clearly visible, especially with turning traffic. That's a huge advantage for pedestrians at that point. Upgrading signals, ADA accessibility, stuff like that is kind of the bulk of the recommendations. Like I said, that public meeting is Thursday night at 6. The advisory committee will meet, I believe it's next Friday, to kind of go over any final comments. The draft of the report that you all received is posted on the ATRC website. We're going to leave that up for another week or so for additional comments or questions, and then get this wrapped up and finalized in June to then kind of turn it over to the city for what they want to determine are the next steps they want to implement or move forward from.
Jennifer, thank you. Tony, did you have anything to add, or council? No. No, I don't think so. Council, is there any questions? Councilor Boss?
It's a comment, not a question, but the minor delays caused by the modified road diet are based off of traffic analyses for a future year, 2024, I believe. Jennifer, you can clarify for me. So it's looking ahead and projecting that we will see economic growth and development in the downtown, and that will increase traffic. So the modeling that's done as part of the study is looking ahead at future projected traffic levels. So it wouldn't be as bad as it would be today with today's traffic.
Understand. So basically, if I could just, for a little bit of clarification, so you're looking at, really future looking at our goal of a commercially viable downtown being successful.
Correct.
Within 4 years. Understood.
And
Thank you.
increased traffic.
Okay,
Yep.
very good. Is there any other comments or questions from the council? Councilor Lasagna?
Just, how do we access the public meeting on Thursday? Is that on the city website?
Yes, I think the staff will be pushing that out and promoting that, and it'll be the same thing that the community gets currently regarding a council meeting.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Very good. Ms. Williams and Mr. Boyer, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we look forward to oh, Peter, did you have something? You're just waving by?
I just want to thank Jennifer for the update. Appreciate it very much. The Court Street study is of great interest to the city. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much. Okay, and moving on. Downtown vision discussion with Director of Economic Community Development, Michael Chamings. Give a second for that to pop through. And while he's coming through, this is just a follow-up to our last discussion about increasing via CIP the amount for our downtown development zone, along with some, it was requested for staff to come up with some preliminary ideas, as well as review potential order as a good checks and balances for that money to be expended in the future.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, council members. I don't believe the cover page made it into the package. This was kind of a last minute add into the agenda. So basically, staff is reviewing how a city investment in downtown could be used to spur development and economic growth. The strategic plan reiterates multiple times the importance of the downtown for continued growth and prosperity for our city. Current development obstacles include high construction cost, rate of investment challenges, and down payment concerns. In some cases, a zoning adjustment may make sense. A focused city investment plan and several cornerstone projects would help overcome these challenges and make additional investments more enticing. Investment options to be considered include low or no interest loans, forgivable loans, or grants for projects meeting specific criteria. Staff is reviewing current policies available in municipalities. Rough valuation and tax figures will be provided later on in this discussion. So what we did is we reviewed the last council meeting, and we looked at how does this tie into the strategic plan, the comprehensive plan, and the downtown action plan. We looked at what's inhibiting investments in the downtown and in comparison to other downtowns. We also looked at our current incentives and programs. We did conclude that this could be a good program that would help meet the goals that we reviewed. And then we started talking about what would be the best use of the funds. We knew the goal wasn't dollar for dollar return on the money. It was to start the downtown to make our goals achievable. So we're looking at larger projects that allow a draw of other investments. And also, as you know, the last program the council voted to put into place, staff from 4 departments set guidelines, created applications, and took applications and dispersed funds within 4 days. This is a larger program, less urgent time frame on it. the last one was due to the coronavirus, and that was bridge funding. So we believe that before the bonds come out and the money's available, that we can have a program put into place. We've been extremely successful with economic development and industrial in the other commercial areas of the city, as you'll hear later. Right now, we're working on over 570,000 square feet of new space in these areas, and anywhere between 80 and $100 million of investments. So right now, we're looking at identifying the buildings and locations that shape the perception of the city, that make the downtown, programs that will make the downtown more of a destination and maximize the return on the investment. What you're looking at there is obviously it's the golf block, it used to be called No Tomatoes, the cornerstone of the downtown, we believe. And we're just putting these for examples. They're not inclusive or exclusive of other properties or anybody that's been applying for anything. They just happen to be two good examples of properties that could be enhanced quite a bit with the right investments that have been looked at. And the one on top is an existing building. The one underneath is a city-owned property that had some blockades put into place when they were trying to invest into that. And that I believe is something that could be overcome by this program. So the limitations on the available incentives, we have TIP and CDBG, basically our largest incentives, which is what most municipalities have, are TIFs. That's our largest economic tool that we have. There's limited uses because they're dictated by state statute with program development funds. And the funds availability, the funding's not available until after the project's complete over a long period of time. So that hit an issue with people that were maybe not hitting the 20% down payment on a property. And then again, it goes back to these limitations on state statute. CDBG, which Zach went over tonight, did a good job. We use a lot of those incentives, but then again, they have income requirements, the environmental assessment review requirements, and which is 6 pages of federal funding, and a lot of other requirements that come along with federal dollars. So before this was brought up to the council by the mayor, I had talked to the mayor several times about this, and talked to several developers and what's inhibiting the investment of this downtown. And that was some of the concerns, is that some of these funds could not be utilized in a way that would help those projects move forward. It doesn't mean that these TIF and CDBG funds couldn't be leveraged along with these funds, because they certainly could be. But then again, there's a lot of limitations there. I don't know what's on the next. There we go. So we have proposed investment options of low or no interest loans, forgivable loans, and grants. The loans and grants can be used towards the down payment gaps, construction, equipment, and property upgrades, and et cetera. The terms and conditions would vary project by project basis depending on the proposed uses. So what we would do, which we started to do, is to set up a program description and put those perimeters into place, say, here's our goals in the downtown, how do we meet them, what's the best use of these funds. And it's a semi-large project, as the program would be large for the city, so we would have to put a lot of guidelines in places to make sure they utilize properties to their intent, and we still would have to do some research, legal research on loads of grants and such that go out and how that would be handled. Currently, the last loan program we did and the current one we do through CDBG, we have loan committees and committees that review these, and they stay in-house with a certain amount, and they get processed fairly quick. And so I think we could put guidelines into place fairly easy. We would be looking for a lot of input after we come up with suggestions and proposed guidelines, bring that to the board and get the input at that point. I guess that's the end of the slideshow. They have the, so right now, we turned this around as quick as we could from Tuesday morning, and looking for a lot of input, but we did review not only Maine, but other states that have some of these programs that they do. I know the mayor had mentioned on his building and his process he went through with Lewiston, and they have a revolving loan through CDBG And they're the only ones left in New England that do that because HUD no longer allows that, and they would actually like them to lean out. I believe this would even give us more leeway than the program that they were using over until listed. So that's what we were looking at, trying to get some guidance on it. And then that's what we propose is for the next council meeting is to put together some suggestions of these guidelines. If you're going to go ahead and vote to amend the CIP to put this in here, we would then go ahead and take that effort and bring that forward. That's what I have.
I'll bring it back to the council real quick for any questions. I mean, this is under communications, it's not a workshop. So I think we should probably avoid a debate if they ever came to it, just to keep in the spirit of our agenda item. But if there's any questions directly to Michael, please ask now.
I couldn't hear a fair amount of what he said. Can one of you who's familiar with this restate what this is, or is that too difficult?
No, I mean, in a nutshell, I'll just try to paraphrase it. And Michael and Peter and Phil, jump in. It's actually a great exercise if the paraphrasing is off. It's a tool, and I think this PowerPoint will be distributed to all the councils and made public, councilors and made public as well. But really, it's a tool that we can apply in addition to the CDBG money, in addition to our TIF and credit enhancement agreements, as a third leg to an economic stimulus stool, in order to really focus in on several projects that are small, medium, or large in our downtown that will then have additional spur-off businesses associated with that, or start accomplishing some of our goals within our strategic plan. This all ties together very nicely with the CDBG 5-year and 1-year plan. I think this slide really illustrates the financial aspect for you. Councilor Azania? Oh, sorry. If we're looking at our mill rate and talking about how much revenue we're generating, tax revenue, okay? Right there, you can actually see how much annually from year 1 down to year 20 we'd be generating on some of these projects, which is a different way of looking at it. By funding and helping up front through gap loans or grants versus, or with a minimized credit enhancement agreement, we can actually realize higher proceeds from tax revenue throughout the lifespan of that project. So that was kind of, I would really brief paraphrase.
That was very helpful. Okay. Thank you.
What we tried to show there also is that, so you have a loan pool that could be partially a grant pool that showed if you had 100% default on these loans, that even with the smallest investment, the lowest benchmark, that most of that money would come back into the city, and that's already in a TIF zone, so it's 100% captured back into that. Which we'll look at in the TIP program that we have that does mention the downtown plan that can be funded. So we can look to see if that is reimbursable. So if we're looking at worst case scenario with 100% default, you're almost paying back your $1 million initial investment. So with that being said, looking at if you're looking at a 250,000, bringing in 5 million, if you helped out with 250,000 one project, that you would really be getting back $2.3 million in new value. Obviously, the two examples we use, one is an existing building. If somebody put $1 million of that, the value would go up $1 million. But the other building, if somebody put in a $5 million building there, you're looking at $115,000 in taxes coming in off of one building per year. That's already captured in that downtown.
Do we own that Court Street, Main Street? Okay, I
But
thought he
Main Street
said
we do. The Main Street, the bottom one, that land is city owned.
the land.
Yeah.
But not
Yeah,
the
so
building.
that's a concept that somebody brought forward.
No, I mean the
It
top
actually
one.
was looked at by 3 other investors because they really like that concept with our bump back and we own that property.
Well, I think we told them how we felt about that concept last council.
Yeah, we did. Unfortunately, if memory serves me correctly, which it does in this case, we denied zoning to allow them to go up 1 extra story. That building would have been built generating tax dollars and economic stimulus today. It would have been finished by now if we approved that zoning change. So it was an old factory, I believe a meat processing plant, if memory serves me, or a shoe mill. you remember Councilor Walker, it was something. Then it burnt down in the 70s, 80s. So there was an existing building there. So, and there still can be. But that's one example. There are other city-owned lots throughout the downtown. Michael, I'm not sure if you all in your team have identified any other examples of projects.
Yeah, for this meeting, we just picked those because one was a vacant lot and the other one was a cornerstone property, just we thought was good examples and just to show the return on investment that we would have. Obviously, the more you have in a downtown, the more it's going to draw. And that's just looking at the return on taxes and not jobs created and other businesses coming in and the livability of the city.
Is there any other questions about this presentation before we keep moving forward? Does the council feel comfortable giving direction that this is a path that we want to continue on after hearing this initial or this secondary workshop presentation, if you would? Yes? Councilor McLeod?
So this is in regards to adding $1 million to our CIP.
$800,000 additional to the $100,000 that's already there for the Great Falls development.
Right.
The manager added another $100,000. We renamed it to the downtown to be more inclusive of our defined downtown, and then adding $800,000 to that.
Okay.
So $1 million total, $900,000 in new.
And from the financial chart there, the return on investment on a single smaller property would be 10 years, or is it 20 years without the chart up there? I'm just looking at the total return on investment. If we're taking out money, which is fairly inexpensive now to borrow, what the overall risk to the city is compared to the obvious reward that was up there.
It looked like a $5 million, if I was correct. The $3 million column was a 9-to-1 ROI over 20.
Okay, thank you.
It was
But I
20
think we
years.
can pull that up.
Yeah, that's what I was
Here we
looking
go. I mean, if you look at the total,
20,
let's
okay,
say it was $1 million invested on a $12 million project, you're looking at about a 5.7, and so forth. It really depends on the initial amount invested.
Right,
on
but
each,
on the very low end, we would need to find a $2 million project created to get our money back.
Yeah, I mean,
Break even,
if we did a $1 million subsidy to a $2 million project, I think we'd all be looking for new jobs next election season. That would be a 50% subsidy for a project. But your point taken, worst case, absolutely worst case.
Okay.
It's not being recommended that full $800,000 goes towards that.
This is if you did 100%
No,
grant,
absolutely.
which we don't want to present that. We think it would be a hybrid of loans and grants and forgivable loans if they met the milestones of it.
And we'll get this presentation.
We'll email it to you.
Thank you.
And again, we're working on orders now that any substantial project would have to come to council for approval, very similar to a TIF district creation or a CEA, credit enhancement agreement. Okay. No more questions on this? I think we're in consensus right now that we can keep progressing. Very good. It's exciting. Thank you very much, Michael. We appreciate the presentation and the time everybody put into it.
You're welcome. Thank everybody for your time.
Next up, we have a COVID-19 update. Deputy Chief Fairfield and Phil Corral will be presenting.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Hey, Council Mayor, here's your weekly update for COVID-19.
Hey, Matt, before you start, we're having a hard time hearing you. I don't know if you can get right into your mic would be great.
Okay. See if I can adjust this. You hear me all right now?
That's better.
Okay, Council Mayor, good evening. Here's your update for COVID-19 for this week. 1,533 confirmed cases, 180 probable cases, for a total of 1,713 total cases. That's an increase of 26 on today. 71 total deaths in the state of Maine. That's an increase of 1 today. 1,053 total recoveries for the state of Maine. That's an increase of 25 for today. Brings our active case total in the state of Maine currently at 589, and that's no change from the previous day. Total hospitalizations at this point, 223 total hospitalizations, an increase of 7. Currently hospitalized, 42, that's an increase of 5. Critical care patients in the state of Maine currently, 16. That's no change as of yesterday. Patients on ventilators at this time, 10, which is a decrease of 1 over yesterday. More locally here in Androscoggin County, 139 confirmed cases, that's an increase of 8 over yesterday. 71 active cases, that's an increase of 7 over yesterday, and still only 2 deaths. Also, during a conference call with Maine CDC today, they highlighted a couple items I'd like to bring to your attention. Today, they did announce the removal of the tiered testing system, which is allowing any doctor in the state of Maine to submit testing for a patient under their care that now has symptoms. It also provides testing for anyone who's in close contact with anybody with a positive case. They still did say today, many of the new cases are coming from known outbreaks, although the numbers continue to climb. They are focusing on the positivity rate after widespread testing gets into motion. And right now, they see no large jump in that. None of the information or other cases that they've seen is any information that they did not anticipate. Excuse me. More locally here in Auburn, I'm sure most of you have seen in media outlets that Clover Manor or Clover Healthcare on Minot Avenue does have a defined outbreak this time, containing of 4 staff and 1 patient at this time. We were in contact with them on Friday and again today. They did confirm this information with us, and they also confirmed today that all of their residents were tested today with the assistance of Auburn Androscoggin Home Health and Maine CDC. They're prepared to have those tests back in the next 48 hours. The only people left to be tested on their facility is 50 staff that were not working today. So again, I'll refocus back many of the things I've said over the last few weeks. As the testing capacity increases to about 7,000, which is the goal of the state, Maine CDC, we will see an increase in cases. And we need to keep focused on the positivity rate, current hospitalization capacity in the state of Maine, and how those hospitals are managing those patients, and also widespread testing or increased testing. And like I said, the state's goal at this point is for this week is to meet 7,000 tests. Just to put that in perspective, up until May 6th, they had conducted only 22,000 tests. And from May 6th to May 15th, they conducted almost 11,000 tests. So those tests are definitely going up. Those allow the state to quickly respond to outbreaks when those are identified, allowing the Maine CDC and local authorities to put containment measures in place. I think we're still heading in the right direction. Welcome any questions or concerns.
I'm going to turn over to Phil. You can.
Well, if anybody has questions for Matt, we can start there, and then we'll go up with further updates.
I just had a quick question. Do we know how many employees there are at Clover, just to get a general sense? As we're testing everybody at Clover, the numbers are going to jump, in the next 48 hours. Do we have an idea of how many employees they have total?
I don't have the number for employees. What I do have is between the employees and the patients or residents, there's about 500 people there.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else for Matt?
I will add one thing. They have already put preventative measures in place and working closely with the CDC, along with the Androscoggin County EMA, to make sure they have plenty of supplies in place. And they've already established a COVID area of the building. Should they get testing back over the next 48 hours, it indicates a large, widespread outbreak in the facility.
Okay. So staff-wise, for transitioning, we are moving towards opening up Auburn Hall. Some municipalities have already done that. We've been taking more of a slower approach to this to ensure that we have good protocols in place. Those have been established. Staff has done a great job in the last few days and last week getting systems in place. If you were to come in on the ground floor, you will see that there are now stickers on the floor. We have holding areas where if somebody's being waited on, where they would go back to. We have plexiglass at all of our workstations that the staff will be interacting with the public on. Matt's working with them on good safety protocols for transferring paperwork, how to handle that paperwork, staff to be ensured that they have the proper PPE resources available to them to be able to meet with the public and do those transactions. We have also set up on the second floor, we'll have a screening station, self-screening station for all staff as they come in, and we'll be able to document that, ensure that staff that are coming in are healthy, not experiencing any of the symptoms regarding COVID before they go to their workstations. So we have good protocol in place. The hours of operation, we have reduced those. We're going to be open from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. The intent there is we have a lot of cleaning, a lot of work that has to be done when we transition back at the end of the day. This gives staff an opportunity to do that. They're also, because of the way that we will handle transactions, they're not as efficient. It'll take time afterwards to spend some time catching up on those transactions that they've done during the day. That'll give them time to be able to do that. We want to make sure we at least cover it through the lunch period. So if somebody wanted to come in during their lunch break to do a transaction, we could do that. We are limiting how many citizens come into the building at any time. There will be someone at the door asking what their services that they're looking for, directing them, and keeping account of how many coming in and how many are going out. So I think we've done a great job of getting protocols in place, systems in place. We have met with staff that will be coming in and having that public facing. We've had a good conversation. They feel very comfortable with the precautions that have been put in place, the information that we've shared with them. Matt will be meeting with them before we open and going over some further protocols. But so we'll be pushing that out probably tomorrow, that we'll be opening, and we'll start bringing traffic into the Auburn Hall. Second floor is going to continue to be closed to the public. First floor will be the only access point. We'll be putting signage, if it's not up already, I haven't been out in the parking garage, but signage in the parking garage to limit people to that first floor entrance. They can still go up on the second floor, just take the elevator in the second floor and come in on the ground level. That'll be the access point for all public. Vendors will be able to come into the building on the second floor. We want all vendors coming in to go through the same self-screening because they will be in staff's work area. So we'll want them to be self-screened before they come in. Matt, do you have anything to add? You've been a big part of working with Derek on the facility.
Well, I think it's come along nicely. A lot of the employees that are there now seem excited to be back. They're happy with a lot of the work that's been going on behind the scenes while they've been away. And we'll further that opportunity for them to ask questions tomorrow and make sure we have everything in place for a successful opening on Wednesday.
And we've been working with the public right along since we've closed. We've been still doing, I guess you could say, curbside services. So if citizens have called and they've needed a service, whether that be a marriage license, we've really tried to push marriage licenses online because that is possible. But there's some things that they may need to come in for. We've been able to meet them curbside, do that transaction. So we've been doing that right along. We've had staff available, but this will be the next step. And we'll still be providing that. If we might have some citizens that they do not want to come in, we're going to work with them over the phone to maybe be able to conduct their transaction online, or we'll be able to talk with them through the phone and be able to accomplish that same thing if a citizen does not feel comfortable coming into the building. So I think we're in a good place to go ahead and open and be ready to serve the public.
Drive-in marriages, huh?
Drive-in marriages.
That might be something. You get a little cocktail to go and a drive-in marriage. We might be onto a future tourism string. Mark Goslin, speaking of tourism, put that on the list.
Can I just ask, are you requiring people to wear masks who come into the building?
So we have signs up that do say that we encourage it, but it's not being required.
And the last part of this communication would be Mark Goslin on recovery plan update.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, awesome, great. Yeah, Mayor, I just made a separate note on the marriage thing, so, but just don't expect it in the recovery plan, okay? But I just made a separate note. All right. Real quickly, want to cover three things as it relates to recovery tonight. First, the surveys. Second, I want to talk about the recovery website. And thirdly, I'd like to talk about the full recovery plan. First, thank you to everyone who submitted their input on the surveys. We got those all by the end of last week. Today, tomorrow, we're going to fine tune some of the feedback that we received from everyone. So thank you again. Very helpful. You know, anytime you get multiple eyes to a document like that, it allows different perspectives, which is very useful, especially during this time when it's such a challenging thing to deal with. So thank you. We're going to work on getting that squared away and try to get that out this week and give about a 7-day response period to get the surveys back to us. And then we're able to utilize that data to help further build the recovery plan, create frequently asked questions, you know, the community might have, and provide those resources to everybody. Secondly, meeting with Liz Allen and Rosemary Mosier tomorrow in regards to the recovery website and the details around that. So you can expect hopefully another update as it relates to when that's going to go live. We're going to talk in more detail about that tomorrow. And then also I am meeting this week with Assistant City Manager Phil Crowell and City Manager Peter Creighton about the recovery plan and the details that are within that. Before, you know, I want to get their feedback as well as the rest of the recovery teams before I get that to you, but that is finalized now as it relates to kind of everything that I think that should be in the document, as well as from the feedback from the recovery team and all the departments. We might have some minor stuff to add or omit from it, but I think that, you know, about 90% of it's there. So I want to meet with them and get their feedback before I get it to the counselors, so you guys can take a look at it as well. Before I do that, I do want to share my screen if I can, and see if I can bring up. I don't think I can. Oh, I guess it's not there. We, as part of the details of the plan, we have some different tables and some data that we're working with. For example, in recreation, you know, the minutia details within the plan are going to have phases of opening and protocols and those specific things that Matt and Phil were talking about as it relates to how we're going to open. So I'm anxious to share that with you, and I will be sharing that with Peter and Phil this week, so we can get that moving and we can get the recovery plan actually moving forward as well. So that's a quick update with the recovery team. I've got a great group that I'm working with, and I appreciate all their efforts, and open to any questions.
Councilor Zani?
Thanks, Mark. I know how hard you've been working on all of this. Will there be an easily accessible site on the website for somebody who wants to do the survey? Because
Yes.
I'd like to encourage a lot of people to do that. And you'll let us know when that's available and maybe a link to it or something.
100%. And then also I wanted to address the question that was brought up too about those individuals that might not be able to have access to technology. Is, you know, we're also willing to reach out to people by phone and walk them through the survey if need be. And, you know, our team is willing to do that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I will leave with this then, since there are none. One statement. If there's anything that requires council action or consultation on, we cannot wait till next meeting, because it'll be in June. Please inform us so we can call a special workshop or meeting, whatever's appropriate. There should be no delay whatsoever. And while I'm a large fan of working to standard versus time, do not let the council's schedule be a hindrance in rolling out. So we will get the necessary people together, whether it be Zoom or in person, in order to effectuate any change you need.
Okay, well,
Fair enough,
thank you, sir.
council? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mark and Deputy Chief and Phil. We appreciate your updates. We're going to turn over to council communications. I'd like to start with at-large councilors. Start with Councilor Boss first. Work way around.
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Walker.
Nothing today.
Councilor Carrier.
Nothing today.
Councilor Milks.
Nothing today.
Councilor McLeod.
I just wanted to say it was really nice to see some of the school teachers driving around, honking at all the kids outside, waving around my neighborhood this past week. So it was nice to kind of do a parade. They had signs on their cars and stuff like that saying that they missed their students and stuff. I believe it was the Washburn area school system. So it was really nice to see that, and the kids were outside waving, and it was kind of joyous to see. So that's all.
That's great. That's great. Counselor Gary. No, I'm sorry, Counselor Lasagna.
I was actually going to say that's kind of the same thing that Councilor McLeod said. I really appreciate what they're doing in terms of graduation, because I think it helps us to all understand how important and symbolic things like this are. I think we just think of graduation as something that everybody does, but it just shows that it's a really a significant ceremony that we need to acknowledge, and I appreciate what the school is doing.
Counselor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From what I understand, the grab and go meals are going to be continuing at least till the 29th of May, and then it's going to transition from meals that you can pick up to groceries. And unclear if you're, say like me, I deliver like 11 meals. It's unclear if all of the 11 that I deliver meals for are going to participate in the program, because I'm not sure how I can lug 11 people's worth of groceries.
Sabrina certainly can work with you on that. I'm sure, however that came about that you were doing that, I'm sure the same communication will go as far as we are delivering to a lot of different areas. So if you're not able to do that at Barker, we'll just add that to our other delivery route.
Because what I'm guesstimating is if other tenants find out 11 of their neighbors is going to be getting groceries, and they'll be wanting to be added to the list as well.
People just need to register. We have, certain slots that are available, but they can register. So.
Thank you, because I don't mind doing this. I enjoy meeting my tenants, my fellow neighbors and stuff, and the meals have been a godsend to a lot of them. A lot of them miss the opportunities of going out to eat. They usually walk down to Raleigh's or Happy Days or even to Roy's to get something to eat, and because of the virus they can't get out to where they normally go. And then sometimes others would go and bring a lunch back to those that can't leave the property for physical or health reasons. So the meals have been a success, and I thank all those that have been working so hard to put them together, because it was a work in progress, and the meals right now are wicked cool. I've even had some of the meals. So kudos to staff and all the countless volunteers and all the runners that run from the building to the cars to load in the different meals. Thank you.
Good, no, thank you. I'm going to go into my communications. As I had mentioned earlier, I've been working to try to secure additional funding for the City of Auburn. A lot of research of the CARES Act has been, I forwarded the council a letter I sent to the governor. The letter was received. We were talking a lot with other mayors, elected officials, the press over the last 5 days about the first tranche of money from the CARES Act. So everybody knows, it's $1.25 billion that was sent to Maine, around $900 per person. That was the formula, per capita formula that they used across the country. Maine's population was low, so we actually got the statutory minimum of $1.25 billion. That money is designed for state, county, and local governments, and went directly to municipalities over 500,000 in population. There are a lot of reimbursable expenses that the city qualifies for in that based upon federal guidelines. From a cost of delivering food to seniors is an actual spelled out or prescribed reimbursable event. Staff time, they've been focused on either recovery or dealing with COVID. Additional expenses on PPE, reimbursements or grants directly to our businesses to help them staff up and better prepare for reopening in a safe fashion. There is quite a lot of good things. Right now, that money, we are actively lobbying to have the governor release her plan on disseminating that money to the local government sooner versus later, so then we can in turn disseminate that out to our local businesses and families that are in need. At the same time, I'm working with a congressional delegation with several phone calls to help give them some opinions on another federal stimulus and how that might happen. or if that will happen. So there's ongoing communications there. So I just want to let you know that we're working on this. I will update the council, city management, as soon as we hear more. But frankly, you all will know probably the same time I do if the governor announces that plan. So we'll all be happy together. That's the first thing. Second thing, I want to talk about committees. We really do want to start releasing committees to be able to work. I would like to delegate the majority of that out to assistant city manager and city manager to make sure staff is capable and done their backlog of work, potentially, or even here, available, to conduct those in a safe fashion, whether it be in Zoom or in person or a hybrid of the two. There's a lot of moving parts, but that needs to start happening quickly. The primary one that we need to have meeting is our new agricultural committee, or excuse me, commission. I'm going to exercise chartered responsibilities to give them a list, a priority list that they need to look at in order to positively affect the health and safety of our population now and potentially in the future if there's a second and or third or subsequent waves of COVID-19 or any other new type of pandemic. That will include, but this is not a final list because it would be premature. I wanted to hear what Julia Harper and the rest of the presenters said tonight based upon their analysis, which will help inform those decisions, as well as conversations with each of you individually. But that will also include, but not be exclusive to, dealing with food insecurity with regards to full inventories of our agricultural lands and what they're currently producing right now. An asset list, if you would. Most of this has been done, but needs to be consolidated. Second, we'll be looking at meat processing here in Auburn, which has a rich history of that 100, 125 years ago. I'd like to understand what the Agriculture Commission has for an opinion and research into national best practices on how to entice those organizations back to Auburn. Third, how do we define what subsistence farming is? We could not do that in the last council. We had a little logjam on that. But I believe now it's more important than ever for families that want to produce their own food to be able to do that and live at the farm in which they're producing those foodstuffs. As well as options for storage, both dry and refrigerated storage. So there'll be a list of 6 priorities that they must work on in order to meet our health and safety goals for the city. Okay, make sure that we're ensuring that. I will be asking counselors for feedback on this and to help prioritizing that list. I'll also be in this executive order asking for a counselor to act as the semi-permanent liaison between the Ag Commission and the City Council in order to make sure that these priorities are actually executed, followed, and communication exists and is quite open between the Council and the Commission. That's my update on that.
Mr. Mayor, can I also say that I think that the study that was done previously really outlines a lot of what you're talking about, and that can help be a guide for the committee. And that study was done by a broad range of people, not just us.
Actually, yes, it was done by the Crossroads study. There are several studies going back to the Blackwell report in the 60s. It's about them putting together the data and providing recommendations in a non-political fashion and very, very quickly.
If I can add one more comment, I liked the list that you provided of the items that they should be considering quickly, and I think that adding processing and value added would also be really critical because I know that those are really important pieces to making farming possible, making it financially viable.
Thank you for that. And I'd love to solicit feedback at a future point from you all. We do have about a week before, but I expect this order to come out within the week so staff can properly prepare the information to guide the Agricultural Commission on their first meeting. That's it for my...
Committee or commission?
Commission. It's the only...
Is it?
It's a commission.
Okay. I just want to be clear because it's committee in...
Should be a committee.
In the way it's written.
We have one commission.
Conservation.
Yeah.
It's too many C's. So yes,
it's committee.
Committee.
It is committee. Thank
Okay.
you. Okay. Yes, committee. So there'll be other input I'll be soliciting, but look for that order to come out within the week. And that is it for my updates. Again, it's a very dynamic situation. I'd like to update the public as much as possible. And of course, you, as anything pertinent comes in, I have been, I will continue to do so. So, thank you.
How long has the governor had the money in hand? Do you know?
The deadline for submissions to the federal treasury for their certification process was April 17th. May 4th, final guidelines came through. I'm talking about this a lot, it's all up here. May 4th, final guidelines were issued by U.S. Department of Treasury. I do not know how long money has been in hand. I will say that the state of Washington started distributing and announcing April 27th the amounts of $25,000 per municipality and $250,000 per county in order to kickstart that process and just give a little in. To let you know that roughly so far, I believe it was $150,000 of city expended money so far in COVID-19 are reimbursable, including our $50,000 that we expended in our emergency reserve for our small business loan program. It's prescribed that that is a reimbursable event. Everything that Deputy Chief Fifield's doing, everything that City Hall is doing to prepare, there's quite an exhaustive list. Now, in theory, Auburn's share, in theory, would be $22 million. There's more, a lot of big chunks of that have to go to the state and go to the county to help with jail PPE and so forth. But I believe asking for a reasonable amount, that's reasonable. This cannot be used to make up revenue shortfalls, though, in budgets. This can only be reimbursable expenses, and it can't be capital expenditures. But it can be used, and in the overall scheme of a budget, it's extremely helpful. So that's what we're looking on. But there's states, Delaware is distributed, Alaska's distributed, and Washington State are the three that pop up to mind that I've researched.
Is it a pretty straightforward process for the city to submit their reimbursables?
We don't know. We haven't had any guidance yet from the governor's office. That's what we're waiting on. That's what we're lobbying for. We need guidance. We need information. If you look at the Department of Treasury's website, it's they've simplified the process with very clear, frequently asked questions and official guidance on what is and is not allowed. So how you pull that information from the municipalities is still unknown.
I would just add, we're very familiar with FEMA reimbursements, if they go along those guidelines. That's why we have tasks so far. Derek Belanger has been tasked as part of this team that's working on this, as well as Rita Beaudry, who is our executive assistant for the PD, but also the grant writer. She handles all of the federal reimbursement programs that we have. So that team has been the ones that have been primarily looking at, trying to anticipate what these reimbursement requirements will be, so that we're tracking that in-house to be ready with those numbers.
Great, that's smart.
And I did send the council links directly to U.S. Treasury websites. Please look them over. I think your feedback and just the brainstorming ideas too might be really important, i.e. increased mileage for folks not being able to share cars for official city business. But really the most important thing is getting food out to our vulnerable populations. We could increase our small business loan or grant program knowing that it's fully reimbursable. The city did an amazing job. Probably the only municipality that I know of that could turn around a $50,000 loan program in 2 to 3 business days. That's the power of local government, and local government knows local people and local businesses. So that's really the emphasis here on how do we reimburse the city, but more importantly, how do we get funds without waiting days or weeks to the companies that are on the verge of folding or the families that are on the verge of losing their savings. So it is a frustrating, yet we keep on driving forth on this one. Very good. That's it for communications. I'd like to move on to open session. Members of the public are invited to speak to the council about any issue directly related to city business or any item that appears on the agenda. Turn over to Kelsey or Sue? Kelsey. I don't know why I'm looking there. I don't think she's actually there.
No one has their hand raised.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'll now close this open session. Unfinished business. There is no unfinished business on the agenda tonight. We're going to move on to new business. New business. Shall we revisit minutes?
Yes, please.
Ask for a new motion to amend the previous motion?
I would, unless the councilors that made and seconded the motion just agree to accept the minutes. The agenda, there was a typo on the agenda, and I noted they were the minutes of the April 27th meeting, but the minutes included in your packet are actually May 4th's minutes.
So motion to accept.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The revised minutes are accepted. I'm like that anchor guy from San Diego who just reads everything that's put in front of him. Some of you got that joke. I think Councilor McLeod's laughing. We're going to move on now to new business. Order 53. We have an order authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute and deliver to BAP Power Corp., doing business as C Energy, or their designee, a net energy billing credits agreement. This is order number 53-0518, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor McLeod, second from Councilor Walker. I'm going to open this up to the public for comment. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this in the public right now? Any hands up?
No hands are raised.
No hands are raised. Moving and bring it back to the council for comment. Councilors?
This is going to be great for our city. This is a good move.
Have we made public how much energy savings or dollar amount savings this is going to mean for the city government over the course of the year?
It's in here, yeah.
It's in here. Councilor McLeod, do you have it in front of you, handy?
No.
It's substantial. I mean, if we can get that either right after we take this vote, that would be wonderful. I do think people need to realize.
The projected savings in year one alone is $33,960.
In year one, 33,000? Outstanding. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed, abstain, none being. Order passes unanimously. Let's go save some money. Next, we have a proposed ordinance amendment, amending Chapter 60, Article 18, Solar Energy Generating System. It's a public hearing in the first reading. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Motion.
A motion from Councilor Walker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor Boss. I'm going to open this up to the public. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak?
No hands are raised.
Bring this back to the council. Council? Comment, discussion? None being, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance
Oh,
amendment.
I'm sorry, roll
Yep.
call.
Okay.
Roll call.
Counselor Lasagna.
Yes.
Counselor McLeod.
Yes.
Counselor Milks.
Yes.
Counselor Carrier.
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
Counselor Boss.
Yes.
Counselor Gary.
Yes.
Order passes by a vote of 7-0. Next, we have another order. Proposed ordinance amendment, amending Chapter 60, Article 4, Division 2, Agriculture and Resource Protection District. This is a public hearing and the first reading. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Order from a motion from Councilor McLeod and a second from Councilor Walker. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak in this public hearing?
No hands are raised.
I'll bring it back to the council.
Mr. Mayor, point of information, can you please explain to the viewers that don't have Zoom or Great Falls or anybody that needs to know what this is? Because it's kind of tied to the first motion.
It is tied to the first one. I'll be honest with you, I'm having a hard time reading that from this distance. Let me open it up. While I do that, Phil or Peter, do you want to jump in and explain this while I bring up the actual language?
Peter, you're muted.
Yeah, I am. Thank you, Phil. The City Council recently approved a solar energy generating systems ordinance. It allows the use as a special exception in the industrial district with applicable standards. After receiving inquiries from solar developers looking at properties in the Agriculture and Resource Protection District, the Ag Zone, City Council asked the Planning Board to amend the ordinance to also allow, as a special exception, large-scale solar arrays in the Ag Zone. Planning Board made a favorable recommendation to the City Council at their May 12th meeting on the proposed ordinance amendment. Staff's recommendation is the City Council approve the Planning Board's recommended ordinance changes.
So if you look at in the package itself, and I don't have the initial language, so I don't want to go ahead and try to compare, but basically the setbacks have been amended, and we workshopped a lot of the proposed changes from
Right.
Conservation Committee recommendation that went to Planning Board along with their recommendation. They have come back with this final.
There's been a lot of work on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some farmers have asked me on the tax value of their farm, if they enter into agreement with this company that puts out solar panels, they still own the ground underneath the panels. Is it going to still be ag land, or is it going to be industrial land? is my question. And is it still going to be taxed the same as ag land?
It's still agricultural land. We're just amending the language within the ordinance authorizing. I won't comment on taxable valuation. That's something for Karen unless we have the
Yeah,
answer from
I would recommend anyone who asks that type of a question that they really should contact Karen Scammon, our city assessor, and she'll be able to walk them through this.
And then the second thing is, we're forming this agricultural committee. Could you direct them to look at this to see if there's any warning flags go off in their head with this new language and what we're trying to do?
This is an authorized land usage in ag land, so no.
Well, ag committee, they should have at least some knowledge of this and to at least have a chance to read it.
And to go forward, yes, this has already been vetted by the Conservation Commission, which I invited the planning board, is authorized and chartered to provide recommendations to the planning board on land use. They've done that. Even in the middle of a pandemic was actually quite impressive. The amount of staff time, planning board and Conservation Commission time in there, as well as our time, is sufficient on this one. There is a time sensitivity as well, because there are projects that are waiting. If you remember, there's only a finite amount of megawatts that will be authorized, and I want to say it's June 1 is the application deadline, or it's relatively quick at the state level in order to get authorization. This will mean a significant impact in a lot of different ways, namely economically for these landowners.
So in other words, if there's any warning flags and the ag committee comes to us counselors, we can amend it on the second reading or discuss it. If this is first reading.
Of course, you can make a motion to amend if you'd like, and if you have the votes, you can amend it. On the second reading, this is a first reading,
Right.
of course.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? None being? Okay, I'm going to ask the clerk for a roll call vote.
Counselor Lasagna,
Yes.
Counselor McLeod,
Yes.
Counselor Milks,
Yes?
Counselor Carrier,
Yes.
Counselor Walker,
Yes.
Counselor Boss,
Yes.
Counselor Gary,
No.
The order passes by a vote of 6-1. Next, we have order 54-05182020. We have 11 board and committee appointments. So actually, I'm going to scratch that. We have 11 board and committee appointments, quite a lot of them tonight as well. So the first is order, we're going to start in order here, is 54-05182020, appointing Darren Finnegan as a full member of the planning board with a term of expiration of January 1, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion from Councilor Carrier, a second from Councilor Walker. Open this up to the public for public comment.
No hands are raised.
Very good. Bring it back to the council. Council, any debate?
Point of order. If we
Yeah.
want to discuss individually some of these, do we need to go into separate executive sessions
Yes.
for each one?
They're separate orders, so executive sessions on each one,
Okay.
if you'd like to. Any debate? None being, I'll ask I don't need to. All those in favor of appointing Darren Finnegan? Unanimous, 7-0. Next, order 55-05182020, appointing Stacy LeBlanc as full member of the planning board with a term of expiration of January 1, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Councilor Carrier, second from Councilor Walker. Public comment?
No hands are raised.
No hands. I'll bring it back to the council. Council, any debate? None being, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously, 7-0. Next, we have order 05182020, appointing Dana Staples as associate member of the planning board with a term of expiration of 1/1/2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have to take a
Second.
motion to make a motion. Do I have a motion? Just someone. Motion, Councilor Gary. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor McLeod. Open it up to the public for comment. Anybody in the queue to comment, Kelsey?
There's public here, but no hands are raised.
Bring it back to the council. Any debate? Conversation? None being, ask for a vote. All those in favor? Approved 7-0. Next, we have order 57-05, excuse me, 182020, appointing David Bell to serve on the Agricultural Committee with a term of expiration of 4/1/2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Councilor Boss, second from Councilor Walker. Public comment?
No hands are raised.
Very good. Bring it back to the council. Council, comment? Okay, none being asked for a vote. All those in favor? Passes unanimously, 7-0. Next, appointing Scott Blanchard, order number 58-05182020, appointing Scott Blanchard to serve on the Agricultural Committee with a term of expiration of 4/1/2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Councilor Carey, second from Councilor Walker. Open this up to the public for comment.
No hands are raised.
To the council. Council debate? None being asked for a vote. All those in favor? Passes unanimous, 7-0. Next, order 59-05182020, appointing David Griswold to serve on the Agricultural Committee with a term of expiration of 4/1/2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Councilor Boss, second from Councilor McLeod. Any comment from the public?
No hands are raised.
Going back to the council. Council debate, comment? I jumped the gun, Councilor Walker. All those in favor? All those opposed? Approves unanimous, 7-0. Next, order 60-05182020, appointing Kathy Shaw to serve on the Agricultural Committee with a term of expiration of 4/1/2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, got a motion, got a second. Open this up to the public for comment.
No hands are raised.
Bring it back to the council. Sue, do you get the motion? And
Lasagna and Gary?
that's great. Okay. Council, debate, comment.
I just had a quick question. Were we staggering the expiration dates on everybody? Is that why they're, okay.
Yep. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? None being. Approves unanimous, 7-0. Next order, 61-05182020, appointing William Sylvester to serve on the Agricultural Committee with a term of expiration of 4/1/2022. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
I got a motion, Councilor Walker, second from Councilor Carrier. Open this up to the public for comment.
No hands are raised.
Council comment? None? Ask for a vote. All those in favor? Passes unanimous, 7-0.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I have some questions I'd like to ask about the appointment committee, about some of the decisions they made. Should we go into executive session?
It's not on the agenda. You can ask individually per order.
I'm going to be asking about positions that were not filled, so the names were not on
That's
here.
not on the agenda. We can request if you would like a workshop on that to discuss, but we can't add that in at this point. It's not part of these orders.
Point of information. Why wasn't all the slots filled out of the 7?
That's starting a conversation that we do not have on the agenda at this time. If someone would like to make a motion to add someone to a committee, they more certainly can do that, which would then open up dialogue. But right now, we're out of order. So we're going to follow the orders, okay? And unless someone follows a proper parliamentary process. Sue?
Point of information, somebody can request to go into executive session even though it's not on the agenda.
Yes.
They can do so.
If you want that to be done in executive session.
I would like to go into executive session to discuss appointments to the Ag Committee.
Are you making a motion?
I'm making a motion to go into executive session to discuss the Ag Committee appointments.
I have a motion on the floor from Councilor Zani to enter an executive session to discuss the appointment committee process. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of going into executive session, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, we need 5.
Yes, we need 5 in order to go into executive session.
Motion is denied.
And the process for getting a workshop to discuss this?
Counselor, you've 3 years now. There's a form you fill out. You know that. Fill out the form. You got to get another counselor to acknowledge that, and then we'll get into the schedule.
I just wanted it to be public.
Next order is 62-0518-2020, reappointing Mary LaFontaine to serve on the Board of Assessment Review with a term of expiration of 10/1/2024. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A motion for Councilor Walker and a second for Councilor Boss. Open this up to the public for comment. Any comment?
No hands are raised.
Okay, we have no comment. Bring back to the council. Any debate? Conversation? None being? All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Vote is 7-0. Next is Order 63-0518-2020, appointing Casey Knight to serve on the Auburn Housing Authority with a term of expiration of October 1st, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Carey and a second for Councilor Walker. Open this up to the public for comment. Is there any?
No hands are raised.
Council, discussion? None being. All those in favor? Passes unanimous, 7-0. Next is Order 64-0518-2020, appointing Keith Ellis to serve on the AL Cable TV Advisory Committee with a term of expiration of 6/1/2021, or to be specific, the Auburn Lewiston Cable TV Advisory Committee. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Councilor McLeod. Do I have a second? Second from Councilor Walker. Public comment?
No hands are raised.
Bring it back to the council. Ask for a vote. All those in favor? Approved. Unanimous, 7-0. Wow, I was on a roll there. We're done. Okay. We're going to move into the mayor's reports. I really gave my report upon communication, so I have nothing tonight. Turn it over to city councilor's report. I'll start in the opposite order, starting off with Councilor Gary's first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm remiss in not saying with the grab and go, it's not just senior meals, that the director of the PAL Center was also helping to procure food for the program, as well as he was feeding a lot of his needy families that go to the PAL and then the community. And I want to make sure that he and his staff also gets kudos for all the hard and work and dedicated hours that he's put in and they put in to distribute food so everybody in Auburn will have a meal.
Very good, thank you. Councilor Lasagna?
The school building committee met last week. I'm sure that Councilor McLeod can have more to add to this. Things are progressing as they had planned. I think everybody saw that they changed the orientation of the building, but in terms of moving forward, they're on schedule. One of the things that will be an issue is parking. There'll be, I think, 2 years where student parking will be not available. So they're trying to figure out a plan for that, and that will be, one of the things they said is students will figure it out, but that's something that is a consideration. And also there's going to be, Mr. Cousins is going to be scheduling a community meeting in June with the neighborhood to be able to discuss the new building and the difference in orientation, any questions that are asked there. The recycling committee met last week, 2 weeks ago, Thursday. And began to plan, looked at the student reports and began to plan what they want to present to the council, which will probably happen in June. Thank you, I didn't have the dates down. But the next meeting is this Thursday, May 21st at 7:30 a.m. and it's in the bump out room and it's a public meeting.
The mayor's conference
By
room.
Zoom.
Very good. I want to remind the council on that too, and city staff, that we had direction several weeks ago, maybe a month and a half ago now, to accelerate the report of the recycling committee before this budget season's over, because the outcome will or could influence that line item in our budget. I want to make sure that actually happens before our second reading. And if that means a special meeting request, let's make that happen. Okay? I don't want to not do that and then miss that opportunity for council debate. Thank you. Moving on to Councilor.
Mayor, I'd like to just make a comment with the school park. And a few months ago, when they were showing the school where it was when it first was going to be built, there was, I know because I asked that question months and months back, would there be parking and how are they gonna park there? And if not, what are they gonna do? We were ensured there'd be parking back then. Now there's no parking. Someone's gonna be scrambling, and I'm sure a lot of these kids are not gonna be happy. And they're
Counselor
gonna
Walker,
wanna
I'm sorry.
park.
The part of the meeting we had the other night where we with some discussion in regards to that, the company that's doing part of the work for us has agreed to carve out a little bit more parking at the front of the school as helping us out with us helping them out in a certain instance. So they're going to be carving out a little bit more parking up front there. And there was also discussion of adding parking at AMS, having them be able to park at AMS and then go to the school from up above. So there's still plans on working that out. We probably won't get the number of spots that we had before for the use of the school, but we are trying to mitigate part of that.
And I think, Counselor Walker, the original orientation of the building did allow parking, so they could guarantee it back then, but when they changed the orientation of the building, that's why the parking is now no longer available.
Yeah, and I understand that, but that isn't gonna make it any easier for the kids
No.
that drive. And the other thing is, I was gonna suggest that someone should go down and talk with the church, and maybe they could do some kind of, deal with the church people.
They did look at that, and it's just not that many spaces. But they are talking to the neighborhoods, and they want any ideas that people have. They'd be happy to hear them.
Very good. Councilor Milks.
We've got a sewer trustee meeting tomorrow, 4 o'clock, and water trustee meeting Wednesday, 4 o'clock.
Very good. Thank you. And I know on the agenda, Councilor Milks will be talking about in lieu of taxes or a hosting fee to the City of Auburn.
Wednesday.
Say again?
On Wednesday.
On Wednesday,
the
great.
Water department, that's correct.
Keep us surprised at that one, too. At
That's
this
on
point,
there.
after looking at layoffs, any little bit helps. So, thank you very much. Moving on to Councilor Carrier.
The airport board has not met again, but we are being kept abreast of it. The construction is fully underway on 1735 across runways. They'll be working on that. They're going to try to tie that into the graduation in June. Once 17 and 35 are completed, they will close down the main 422 so they can reconstruct the very center part of the runway. They are currently still working on moving the electrics from the west side of the airport over to the east side. They'll help them out in the future in getting stuff done. For those of you who didn't watch the meeting the other night, we did get a new school superintendent. Dr. Cornelia Brown has agreed to sign the contract and become the next superintendent of schools for Auburn. We're very excited to get her on board. She has a long history of working here in Maine as a superintendent and doing some great work with the schools that she's been involved with. And so we're really anxious to get that started. And that's it.
Very good. I skipped over Councilor McLeod. I apologize.
I was going to wait till the end. It's fine. I was going to see if everybody took my thunder. So the school building committee met, and as you heard, there's a lack of parking coming up. So they have looked into parking at the fields behind AMS and then busing the kids from AMS up or allowing them to walk after the first run goes through. LATC met last week. We're in the process of starting to pick our transit study organization that we want to represent us. So I'm now on that committee to help for Auburn to decide who's going to do the transit study. And we'll be losing Peter from that committee because he'll no longer be with us. So hopefully Mr. Grohl will take over that position. And we also have a member vacant for Auburn. So if anybody would like to join that committee, please put an application in for the next month.
Very good. Thank you. Councilor Walker?
I don't have anything.
You always have something to say.
No, I'm peaceful today.
Councilor Boss.
We've already heard an update from the Court Street study, but a reminder that that next public meeting is going to be Thursday, May 21st, 6 o'clock by Zoom. We'll see that link be pushed out by the city and others. I really encourage everybody else on the city council to push that link out as well through your own channels so that we can encourage as many public residents as we can to participate. And then just a quick update from the Auburn Public Library. Our next trustee meeting is tomorrow morning, and almost everyone is back on staff and in the building. They're doing shifts so that they can reduce the number of people who are in the building at any given time, but they are mostly back, which is really great. Again, they're not open to the public yet, but they're preparing for their curbside service to go into effect again on June 1st. Get your late books in by June 1st. Customers will be able to put holds on books and CDs and DVDs, and the staff will package everything right up for them, so it's going to be a great process. And they're only able to have access to the items that we own, the APL owns, and there's no specific date for starting back up with the interlibrary loan. So keeping an eye down the road for figuring out when people can come, the public can come back into the building. They're not ready yet, but hopefully sooner than later. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Clarifying question on that. I know some other libraries in the county have already opened up to the public. Smaller ones, Poland comes to mind. Is it, it's right now, we're not bound under executive order not to open, correct? It's just not the right time, or our staff's not prepared?
I'd have to hear from Mamie directly to hear what the reasoning is for not fully opening. But
Okay.
I think that it's the level of comfort of the staff, perhaps. I can find out more
The
information.
significant differences between the small Alvin.
Absolutely. We see a lot of
and
people
APL.
coming into the APL. It's a really, treasured community space that a lot of people utilize, and I think that there's not prepared to open the doors fully yet. But the curbside program is going to be a really great next
Very good,
step.
thank you. That's it for council updates. I'm going to turn it over to the city manager for his report.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Councilor McLeod spoke about the fact that I'll be stepping down from the LATC when I retire. There are 8 committees that I serve on. I believe it's 8. I've talked to Phil about this. I think at the meeting on June 1st, we'll need to have some action so that Phil can at least sit in my seat until he has an assistant city manager on board and can decide what direction he'd like to go in. These committees range from LAPCA to the LATC to the Chamber Board of Directors and so forth. So it's important to have representation from the city, the city manager's office. It's great to have counselors on these various committees. The city manager's office also has representation on many of them. Other than that, you heard my comments on the budget, and I continue to be impressed with the work that staff are doing. Very fortunate to have the staff that we do. These are challenging times, and we all appreciate your support and the leadership coming from the council and the mayor and the work that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Eastman, finance report? Is she on tonight?
One moment while she comes in.
I think this will answer one of the councilor's questions earlier about rev share and how that flow of money happens.
Thank you, Council and Mayor and City Manager. I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Joe.
Okay. You have the April report in front of you, and I'd like to just mention a couple of things. If you look at the revenue sheet, you can see that the city revenues are just about 1% less than they were last year. The biggest part of that is the excise tax, which the governor has given people a chance to not pay those until the executive order is released. I did get notification from the auditors that they are going to allow us to count any revenue that we get in July and August that belong to this fiscal year as revenue for this current fiscal year. So we'll have to track those registrations and so forth that are coming in in June and July. In July and August. And then we can make an entry back to FY20. So that'll help the bottom line of this budget. As far as taxes were concerned, we're actually a little bit ahead of where we were last year, very minimal amount, but percentage-wise, it was $700,000 more than the same time last year. And then, of course, the revenue sharing is ahead of last year, but that's only because we're getting more money from the state at this point than we were, a higher percentage than we were last year. As far as some of the other smaller revenues, they're actually less than last year, but we're not really open, so people can't come in and get, permits or things like that. However, my staff has been trying to do everything that they can to help people with their registrations and things like that. And they're all looking forward to opening this week. On the expenditure side, we are actually a little less than 1% less than where we were last year. So we have asked people to, hold off on non-essential items, discretionary spending, and they've been doing a good job of that. So I don't have really any red flags. I did notice that the rec department was over, but there's a couple of things that we need to fix. After talking to Sabrina, some stuff got posted in here that belonged in a different account. So that should help that. But I think they'll still be over a little bit this year. And on the revenue side, I did want to mention to you that we received a little over $32,000 from the CARES Act for EMS, and that came in the middle of April. So other than that, I would be glad to answer questions if you have them.
Council? Questions? We're tracking?
I have a quick question. When should we expect to see rev share, or when do we start seeing, or might we start seeing the decline or the missing of money that we would be expecting?
Well, we'd probably start right, like now, I think April was down a little bit. We'll probably see it in May and June. We do have a spreadsheet going that we're keeping comparing with last year percentage-wise. So we are tracking that, and I'll be able to let you know, as I will be watching. I've been watching everything very carefully. So, but we only get the revenue sharing once a month.
So once a month. So if we could get updates on that sent out to us electronically, just a trend analysis, projected versus actuals.
Sure.
Thank you.
Can do that.
Yeah. Very good. I think we'd all like to be tracking that. Okay, is there any other questions on finance? Very fluid situation. Jill, thank you very much and you and your staff for being dynamic on this. So we really appreciate that. Okay, very good. I'll entertain a motion to accept and place on file the April 2020 monthly finance report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilor Carey and a second from Councilor Walker. Ask for a roll call vote if possible.
Sure.
Actually, I don't need to right now, not on this.
No, you don't.
No, because we're back in session. We're all back. All those in favor of accepting the finance report? Accepted, 7-0. Thank you. Next, we have an executive session. Economic development matter pursuant to 1 MRSA Section 405, 6C. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilor Carrier, second for Councilor Milks. All those in favor? And we now stand in executive session. Before we go off air, I will say that we have one more executive session, and then we will adjourn. So anybody watching from online or at home, there'll be nothing but an adjournment vote later on live. Thank you.
All right, bear with me for one moment while I put everyone in